Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm back with the whiteboard like my last video. I'm not going to be sitting down and staring at a computer unlike my previous last couple of videos. Now we are back with the whiteboard. Okay. and before we get started, I know last time I pulled out the whiteboard in a video was when I was making the whole pitching idea, which this is another pitching video. Okay. I'm going to pitch to you guys once again another story idea that I came up with. I've been working on. I want to talk to you guys about it. Okay. And like I said, I know my last video where I tried doing this wasn't exactly the most popular video on my channel, but to be honest, I don't blame you guys. I blame myself. Okay, I am the problem here. I understand that in my last pitching video, it was a lot, right? Like I had a lot of ideas. I had a lot of characters, I had a lot of like themes and a lot of like story beats that I wanted to like discuss to fully experience yet. Honestly, if I was to like remake the video, I'd probably make it like in parts where I would go to like specific characters and specific like story elements because I feel like doing it all in one big video just made it very overwhelming and very confusing, especially because, like I had planned everything in my head, but obviously explaining it to you guys, it's going to come out confusing. So I do blame myself for that. Uh, I still think the idea, like my story that I pitched in this video is still amazing. Though. Like, you guys can say whatever you want, but the story itself that I created was fucking amazing. Okay, you can't tell me otherwise. But I am back with this one. I do think this new story idea that I want to share to you guys is a lot more simpler. I don't think it's nearly as confusing because it's more to do with like characters. I don't know. I just feel like it isn't. I feel like the story is a bit more simpler, even if there's more depth to it. Depth, not depth, depth. So I don't know. I just hope you guys can bear with it because I'm passionate about storytelling. All of you guys who know me know that, and I do like sharing it. I do like because no one asks you about these type of things in person. Unless there's other like nerds like me. But I'm gonna share it to you guys. I'm gonna talk about it. Okay, so yeah, let's just get right into this. So this story is called High Profit. I didn't write it down. I forgot to write down the title, but it's called High Profit, And the story, I guess we'll get into like the story details first. So in this story, High Profit, every generation but every generation, the Antichrist is born, okay? And you couldn't tell this is like a lot to do with like religion, but don't just bear with me here, okay? So every generation, the Antichrist is born. The Antichrist is the son, or I don't know if this is like actual like biblical stuff. I'm not. This is more based on like popular media depictions of religion rather than the actual like Bible and shit. I'm not really that religious or like I don't think I've ever really read the Bible, but this is just don't take this 100% serious. Okay, this is not an accurate representation of like Christianity or anything like that. Okay, so this is just my own interpretation of that, right? So anyway, every generation, the Antichrist is born. The Antichrist is the son of Satan and that of like a human woman. And the Antichrist has one purpose and one goal only, and that is to open the portal to hell so Satan can cross over and conquer and rule the earth. Okay, that is his goal. And to counteract this, God doesn't want hell on earth. He counteracts this by picking a warrior, one chosen person to be his sword on the earth. That person is called the High Prophet. And the High Prophet also has one goal: to kill the Antichrist and stop that from happening. Okay, so every generation that happens, and in this story, which takes place in the modern era, or at least not like the making this, but rather whenever it does become a thing, if it becomes a thing, I'm not always so confident saying that. If it becomes a thing, it'll be set in that modern-esque era. In this particular story, it just so happens that the Antichrist is the president of the United States. Okay, yes, we're also getting political. Don't worry, I won't be obnoxious with it. Okay, so that's the main gist of it. Is the story of the High Prophet and his little gang of like friends that he makes on their goal to kill the president, who happens to be the Antichrist. So that's the main gist of it. Okay. Now, before we get into the actual story details, let's get into like the actual themes and like the background, I guess. So if you couldn't tell, this is definitely a political and somewhat religious one. I'm using more religion as like a backdrop rather than the actual focus, right? The actual focus is the politics, right? The bad guy is the president. I am very woke. Okay. So where to start? First off, America, because it takes place in America, right, isn't exactly how America is now. In this story, America is a lot more authoritarian. Like the country, the U.S. is a lot more like xenophobic, right? It's very police state, surveillance state. There's cameras everywhere. There's like this whole system where people are constantly watched by the government. The best example I can think of is if you watch like the government in like the V for Vendetta movie, the movie where like the guy with the mask and does like the whole like 5th of November. the US is basically like the UK in that movie, where it's like this state where it has like a secret police and they have like cameras everywhere, and it's ruled by like a dictator who's not. On this, the story's not necessarily a dictator, but it's definitely a country. It's not the US as we know it now. Maybe it'll be like that in the future. I don't fucking know, but like this is definitely a much more controlled place. Freedom of speech isn't nearly as given. Like I said, in this world, America is like way more xenophobic and racist. Okay, and again, don't. This isn't a reflection of real life. Okay, because of that, minorities are often like mistreated even worse than they are today. And there's like this whole like system. There's basically this like new police who I think I just call them like the America police. That's what I just call them. The whole goal is that any person who is deemed un-American has to go through like a screening process every year, and they fail to be considered American. Which you guys ask yourselves, like, what does it mean to be American? Well, the whole point of this screening system is that it's not clear. Like, there is no like criteria what exactly is to be American. It's literally just like, even in the story, it's supposed to be vague what exactly is considered American. To be patriotic, I guess. So anyone who fails it, they're kicked out. It doesn't matter if you're born in the U.S. It doesn't matter if you lived there for 20, 50 years. If you fail this screening process once and the whole like yearly times you have to go, you get deported. You're not allowed back in. Okay, and minorities especially, like people who are immigrants or children of immigrants, they have to go to like reports basically like like people who are on probation have to go to their corrections officer. It's basically their probation officer is kind of like that, and failure to meet up with the probation officer every month, you get deported. Okay, so it's very racist and very xenophobic against foreigners and immigrants. Okay, so I'm saying that could be America in the future. I don't know. So yeah, U.S. society, U.S. in this world is not exactly a good place to live in. Again, that's a common theme in a lot of my stories. Is they're very like grimdark, whereas you don't want to live here. You do not want to live in this world. Okay, it sucks, especially if you're like a non-white, person of color. This place will suck. Okay, so that's how the U.S. society works. And in terms of the actual like theme, like High Profit, I want it to be like an action comedy. Okay, like I know it's ironic saying comedy. I'm talking about like racism and shit, but it's more of like a dark comedy. Black comedy. I don't know exactly what it's called. It's edgy. It's edgy. Okay, the series is a like a satire, a parody of like U.S. society. Like American culture, American society, American politics. Everything's exaggerated. Also, like it's not like, and I don't mean exaggerate. Like what I'm trying to say is that the world of High Profit kind of operates in like what I would call like Call of Duty logic. Like in Call of Duty, there's like fucking 10 different terrorists all bombing and attacking in the US, and there's like fucking one dude who can take on the whole army with his gun. It's a logic like that. Okay, like it isn't really a realistic. Like realistically, our protagonist, the High Profit, would fail in killing the president. Killing the president is like one of them, like it is a difficult thing to do. So realistically, he would never get close to doing that. But this is a very exaggerated world. Everything's exaggerated. The racism is cramped to the extreme. The fucking violence, especially. I want this to be a very violent story. Dudes have their head brains being blown off and thing. It's very violent. Everything's exaggerated. Okay, and like I said, it's a satire. It's a parody. Like it's like South Park. Everything in South Park is exaggerated, right? So it's kind of just like that. The comedy is a lot like, I guess, like edgy, kind of like South Park. I mean, you kind of have to, right? It's making fun of society. You have to be edgy. It's just kind of how it is. So that's the tone. That's the tone of High Profit. I know I'm like moving my hand a lot. I have like nothing to do with this. So I'm just doing that. So that's the main gist of it. Again, so U.S. society sucks. It's very racist, very xenophobic, authoritarian, surveillance state, police state. Is exaggerated, very violent, comedic though. So okay. Besides that though. Ideally, I would see this as a long form content. So like, and this is gonna sound very nerdy, but I think in a comic book form would definitely work. I feel like 100 issues. Fuck it, 100 issues. This shit's gonna be as long as the Walking Dead comics. Okay, that shit was long. So that would be the ideal format. And this is gonna be controversial. I definitely want High Profit to be controversial. I'm not necessarily a controversial person. I am edgy though. I will admit that. I have a very edgy sense of humor and I guess nihilistic view of the world. I'm very pessimistic about society, and this definitely reflects on that. So if my if you guys, again, if you know me, this definitely reflects a lot on my thoughts. And every like person who creates stories is just a reflection of their thoughts, of their worldview, of what they believe, and that's true for every story. Literally every movie, any show, any game, any comic you can think of, even music, any song you can think of, is definitely like what they say about society, what they say about the world is just the creator's view of it, for the most part. So this is definitely my viewpoint of the world. So it's very, nihilistic. It's very, edgy, and it's very controversial because I like to. I don't know if I am all those things. I like to think I am, or at least not really. Kind of don't want to be those things, honestly. Now I'm thinking about it, but whatever. So that's the story of it. And yes, I know some people pointed out I am growing my facial hair. Check it out. Got a beard growing. Kind of looks ugly, but I'm gonna let it go. Gotta see how it goes. So that's the gist of it. Now that we've gone over like the themes and the tone, and the main like background, I guess we can actually get into the characters and the stories. That's always the fun part. That's the best part. Now, if you've made it this far, comment down that I am doing a good job explaining. Because I feel like that's another thing I kind of fucked up in the last video, is that I don't think I really did a good job of explaining things. I think I kind of like, again, because that was a big mistake. I was just making one video. I should have made it in parts because I feel like I kind of rushed through things and I didn't really give my full explanation and thoughts on it. So whatever. So like I said, every generation there's a high prophet and there's the Antichrist. So the high prophet, our protagonist of the story, our main character, is a young man by the name of Isaac. Isaac, I want to say, might be a stand-in for me. No creator wants to admit that, but a lot of times in the stories that you like, the main character is usually always like the creator's self-insert. And as cringy as this sounds to say, I wouldn't admit Isaac is a self-insert. There are some aspects to his character that isn't me, but there's definitely a lot of aspects that are me, And you'll understand once I get into like the description of him. But I'm just throwing it out there, I'm just admitting it. I'll admit it. It's self-insert. This whole story is it's me. It's just me. Okay, so Isaac, he is 19 years old. He's a Mexican. He wasn't born in the U.S. He immigrated to the U.S. He's on a student visa. He went to the University of Texas. I don't know which one. I don't want to use like actual like real world like organizations or names. I want this all to just be fictional. So it's just University of Texas, somewhere in Texas. The main story, at least for like the first 1/3 of the story, takes place in the city of El Paso in Texas. I picked that city because I don't know. I just feel like El Paso is just kind of like one of those cities that aren't really mentioned in media. I didn't want to pick like Los Angeles or New York or fucking Chicago. That's always a shit. Half of the fucking media is set in those three cities. I wanted to pick a random city that still, people would know, but not exactly be something like, like, oh yeah, let's go there, something. I feel like El Paso was a choice. I wanted it to be set in Texas, mostly just because I feel like, Texas is just a big state. I just feel like it's a good city. I just like El Paso. It's a very Mexican city, so that's maybe another reason I picked it. I do want this to have a very Mexican look to it, like Mexican like culture and music is indebted into, because that's the environment I grew up in, so I definitely want to put that. So it's in El Paso. Isaac is a Mexican immigrant. He's on a student visa. He's not even a citizen, not permanent resident, not nothing. He's on a student visa. He's studying in the University of Texas. I think he's around, I'll probably put him like a 19 years old. That's a good example. So Isaac, however, at the start of the story, his life sucks. He actually dropped out from the university because he was doing horrible grades. He works at like a dead-end minimum wage job. He lives in a shitty apartment. He has like no social life, no friends. He's never like been in a relationship, nothing. His life literally sucks. So at the beginning of the story, the first issue of the story, Isaac is on the top of his apartment complex. He's going to jump. He's going to commit suicide. He's going to kill himself. Okay, that's how the story begins, is our main character is about to kill himself. However, right before he jumps to his death, he is stopped when an angel descends from the skies. And it goes to our next character, Michael, the archangel, who's like an actual biblical figure. And again, I don't want to use like actual, but I'm trying to keep it to like a minimum of actual like, biblical religious figures. Like I said, there's like Satan, God are in the story, but they don't play a big part. Okay. Like you're not going to see Jesus in this. You're not going to fucking see like the Virgin Mary or anyone. They're not going to be in this. Okay. This is like, I don't want to use too many biblical figures. Again, I'm not like an expert on that. I've never read the Bible. I think I've admitted that. So I don't know any of that. This is just all, I'm trying to keep it as original as possible. No Bible. I keep saying characters, but I feel like I shouldn't say that because characters implies that it's like fictional. So I'm not going to use Bible people. I'll say that. Okay, no Bible names. So anyway, Michael the archangel, he descends from heaven. He tells Isaac, like, you've been chosen by God to be the high prophet, so don't kill yourself. And that's how the story starts, okay? And yeah, like I said, the Antichrist is the president who goes to our big bad guys. We get the good guys, we get the bad guys. The president is simply known as President Anders. He has no first name. A big thing is that in the story is that his first name is never given. He's exclusively either referred to as President Anders or Mr. Anders. Anders is like his last name, you know. Also, I didn't say Isaac's last name because I feel like it's just not important. Some of the characters have last names, but we'll get into why that has it. But like most of the main cast, the good guys don't have last names. I just didn't feel like there's a point to it, especially since it's so like changeable. Doesn't matter. But Anders, I feel like it's a good like bad guy last name. You know, Anders. I was gonna go with Anderson, but I removed the son part just because I feel like Anders is just more unique. You know, so the President Anders is the main bad guy, and Isaac is the main good guy. You know, and Anders is the president. Now the story is separated into three sagas, which we'll get into later. But in the first third of the saga, Anders is not actually the president. He's simply a businessman running for president, and we'll get that in a bit, right? But right now, for Isaac, Isaac, in terms of his personality, like I say, he's Mexican. He's average height, average build. He isn't particularly like sociable. He's kind of awkward. He isn't really like physically strong. At least not at the beginning of it. He definitely builds muscle as the story goes on. But he's very like he's not sociable, but he's not like a weirdo. He's not like a loser. You know, it's just that he just doesn't really like. He's super introverted. That's what he thinks. He doesn't go out. He has no friends. Not because people don't like him, just because he just doesn't go out. He just doesn't interact with people. You know. But regardless, he is still kind-hearted. You know, he still wants to help people. He is kind of like the classic, like superhero, like Invincible or Spider-Man. He doesn't. He will go out of his way to help people, even if it means, like, even if it means, I don't know what's the word for it I'm looking for. Like, even if it's not advantageous to him, like, even if it backfires or something. Like, he is a good guy. He definitely wants to do good. I will say though, Isaac has no problem killing people. Okay, like I said, this is a very violent story, and Isaac understands that the ends justify the means, So if Isaac realizes that he has to kill this demon, the Antichrist, and there's like cops stopping him. Now, these cops have nothing to do with it. They're just regular people on the job. Isaac understands that they're going to kill him and he has to kill them. Okay, that's just how the situation is. He doesn't want to, but he just understands, like, he can't beat them up. Okay, this isn't that type of story. He's going to kill them. He understands that. So not exactly a goody two shoes, I would say, but still, regardless, Isaac's primary weapons, he gets more weapons as the story goes on, but his primary weapon is like a sword. He has like this sword that's specifically created for him to kill the Antichrist, and only this sword specifically. Isaac is like very attached to it. He's always wearing, he has like the fucking back thing that like knights have, where he puts it on there. He sleeps with it. Okay, he never goes out with it. He's like attached to that thing. Okay, so that's like a big character trait, is that he never leaves the sword behind. Everywhere he goes, it's always with him. Okay. And like I said, he gets other things. I want to give him like a tiny knife dagger, like a spear that's like both side ended. He has like a bow, but no arrows. But every time he pulls the bow thing, like arrows do show up and he can shoot it. He like sucks at all the weapons at first, but like I said, he trains, especially with Michael, who trains him. He becomes better at it. He becomes really elite. And this is where like the exaggerated part comes in. Like obviously Isaac doesn't use guns. Another big character trait is Isaac is just, it's not that he doesn't want to. He like sucks at using guns, and he just he can't aim for shit, and he's like he's kind of weak, so he can't really use it. So he exclusively uses like swords and close range weapons. And usually in a fight, if you bring a sword to a fight with a bunch of dudes with guns, you're gonna die. You're gonna lose, right? But like I said, this isn't a realistic story. So Isaac, he'll throw some like fucking kung fu moves where like do a backflip and spin and like dodge the bullets with a sword and like slice them. Again, it's not very. And I also want the sword to be kind of like a whip, like they can extend. They can just like slice dudes in half. The sword is very durable. Like he can easily slice through people, even like metal. So, like I said, it's exaggerated, okay? It is. It's kind of like a superhero thing, It's just something you can do. Isaac is very durable, though. Isaac literally has like cannon plot armor, and that's because, God obviously wants Isaac to win. God wants him to succeed. And so, if Isaac is like in a situation where there's like 10 dudes shooting at him, all the bullets will miss, and you'll think like, well, how the fuck does that happen? That's just plot armor. Well, yeah, it is, because God is literally on Isaac's side. God can make the impossible possible. So for Isaac, he literally has like cannon plot armor where he can get away with like surviving ridiculous things, right? Like he'd be on a car and that shit goes over a mountain and like flips, fucking crashes, and like it starts a little bit, and he comes out and he barely has like any scratches because he's lucky. He literally has luck on his side. God wants him to win, so he gets like this ridiculous like invincibility. He's not completely invincible though. Isaac can still get beat up. He can still get shot. God can only help you so much, but still, he does have luck on his side. Later on, he kind of gets like the upgrades. He later gets like a halo ring, like the one like angels have. He gets wings. He can fly. I want to say he gets this thing. I forgot what it was called. I was gonna search it up right before making this video. But like Isaac, there's like a part in the story where Isaac gets a piece of the true cross. A piece of wood that was part of like the cross that Jesus was like crucified in. and he touches it, and it causes his hands to like, you know how Jesus was crucified, he had like a nail through his hands, you know, and it has like a hole. So Isaac develops like a hole in his hand, and it's just in his both of his hand palms of his hand, he has holes on it that could just go through. You could put like a finger through it, and he basically becomes untouchable after that. Like his touch alone could just kill a demon because he's considered holy, you know. And towards the end of the story, he literally reaches what I call sainthood, where he becomes literally so like humble and so like in tune with God that he literally can just steamroll through anything. You know, he basically becomes like a saint. You know, saints. Again, I guess if you're not Catholic, I guess this just sounds like a bunch of baloney. But like saints are considered like pure and holy, so Isaac literally becomes like invincible. So he does reach like a point where he literally becomes like the apex superhero, I guess. So again, that's character development. One like major, I guess, flaw with Isaac is that he easily falls for like girls. You know, like I said, he's never been in a relationship before, and any girl who gives him like the smallest amount of attention, he literally just falls over head over heels for them, and it's like his biggest flaw. And he's so easily like manipulated by his feelings and emotions that it often just leads to him like backfiring, being like, you know, manipulated, and I don't want to say abused, but like easily taken advantage by others, especially like, you know, if the president is Antichrist, he can just send in like a group of army of spies that seduce him. So that is his biggest character flaw, is his, you know, simp. He's kind of a low key simp, but still, like I said, Isaac is very good. He wants to help people. He as the story goes on, he goes to become more confident in himself. That's a big thing in the first like 1/3 of the story. He's not he's not very confident of himself, and in fact, he kind of just like he was literally on the verge of suicide. Like even in the first story, Isaac is still suicidal. He still believes that he's no. Oh shit, my bad. Sorry for that, Chad. But he literally doesn't see himself as worthy of doing this. You know, he wants to try, but he just has like an inferiority complex, I guess you can say. He just doesn't feel worthy of anything. It is until like the end of the 1/3 of the story where he does get that confidence, and it's like a big thing is his character development. He goes from being like the weak-willed, you know, guy who has nothing to live for to me, you know, being the guy who has everything. He has the friends, he has loved ones, he has a meaning in his life. So that's a big story, you know. I guess that's another thing about the theme, the big takeaway of High Prophet, the story, is the idea of, you know, their life is beautiful. You know, there is reason to keep going. You know, your loved ones and your friends and your family are the reason to keep going. And so it's a big takeaway. Isaac kind of learns that, and he goes to appreciate life. He goes, you know, he learns to regret the fact that he ever thought about, you know, ending his own life, and becomes, you know, life is more than just succeeding. It's more about just being happy, you know. So that's what Isaac's character arc is, him just coming to learn to love himself, to learn to love life, to love people, you know, not be so closed off from others. So that's his whole big thing. So that's the thing about Isaac, right? Michael, he's kind of a big character, not really. He's very like strict. Like Michael and Isaac kind of have like a father-son relationship. Like Michael is like the strict dad who has like high expectations, and Isaac is definitely trying to live up to it, even if he isn't really giving it his all, you know. But Michael, in terms of, like I said, Isaac is like Mexican. I want him to be kind of dark skinned, like darker than me, but not too dark, if that makes sense, you know. He speaks Spanish. I guess that's really all about it. But Michael, I want him to have more like a Middle East appearance. You know, he's like, you know, it's like angels, Christianity and like Judaism and Islam all originated in the Middle East. So it just makes sense to me that the angel will just look Middle East. But yeah, he's very strict. He's not like abusive, but when he trains Isaac, he doesn't like hold back. Like he punches the fuck out of him. You know, he like breaks his bones and teaches him. He's very strict about like, this is important. You know, you have to save the world from ending. You know, so for him, he pushes Isaac a lot, and he does kind of see Isaac as like a son. Now he doesn't really see it, like he never calls him his son, but he definitely sees to like protect him, even because the whole thing is that Michael cannot intervene directly. You know, he could like kill demons, but he can't kill people. And half the time Isaac is fighting is just people who are like, you know, in the wrong side. So Michael can only just lead him on and train him without actually getting involved himself, you know. And only that, Michael only shows up like once a week to train Isaac because him being there too long can like attract the demons and like all the bad people. So he can only stay there for so long and train them. And that's kind of a whole thing they got there, you know. So that's the thing. But besides those two, we got more characters, you know. First off, we'll go through the guys first, and then we'll go to the girls. Now, I'm saying the guys are better or anything. That's just how I wrote it. So next up is Rajiv. Rajiv. If you couldn't tell by the name, he's Indian. He's from India. Rajiv is a priest from India. I want him to be like in his early 30s. He is like an expert in demonology, you know, the study of demons. Rajiv, he's a, I think, I forgot the word. I think they call like lay priest, where he's not actually like in the Catholic. Again, if you're not Catholic, this wouldn't make a lot of sense. But like, he's not a type of priest who goes to a church and preaches. He's the one that goes out and studies stuff. He learns things. He records them. And Rajiv is demons. He specifically in his, he owns this book called the Ex Mortis. The Ex Mortis is Latin for death, and well, it's called the Ex Mortis. It goes by another name, the Satanic Bible, and it's literally like an encyclopedia of any like demonology and like black magic and rituals. And he's like, he owns a book in his position. As you can imagine, this is very useful for someone like Isaac, who's constantly fighting demons. So the way they meet is that Isaac and Rajiv, actually, I guess it's not that important, but like they meet up. Rajiv offers to like train Isaac, not in a physical way, but like in the study. Like he helps him learn about demons, their weaknesses. Like Rajiv, because this is a group, right? So Rajiv's role in the group, the Prophet gang, we'll call it, in the gang, is that he's kind of like the smart one, right? He's not necessarily smart as in he's like intellectual, like he can do math smart, but he like knows things. Like if they find a demon, they don't know how to deal with it. Like, Rajiv is usually the one with the answers because he has the book. He knows his stuff, right? He's old. He's been a priest for a long time, so he knows his stuff. And so that's kind of the role he fits in the group, right? He's the go-to guy for like, he's kind of like the Skips of the group, right? In regular show, Skips is always the dude who like knows everything. That's the role Rajiv plays here. So, but yeah, in terms of Rajiv's personality, like say he's in his 30s, he's pretty tall, he's a priest. He's very a pacifist, and he takes that to like the absolute extreme. Like Rajiv can literally have a gun pointed at his head. He's being beaten up. He's being life threatened. He will not defend himself. Okay, he refuses to accept any form of violence. He will let himself die than to like even put up his hand to resist. So he does guns. He doesn't touch the sword neither. He's a true pacifist. But he's also kind of a hypocrite. Because he, like I said, Isaac kills people, and Rajiv does nothing to stop him. Like, again, Rajiv isn't an idiot. He's a priest, but he's not dumb. He understands that, sometimes the only way out of situations you have to kill the other guy. That's just how it is, okay? Rajiv knows that you can't redeem everyone. You can't, if I can go up to a group of like soldiers who are hellbound on killing you and be like, don't kill me. I'm gonna give you a speech. Why? This is not how the real world works, So he's kind of hypocritical in that. And again, there's like a lot of other things, like Rajiv. A big thing about him is that he also like smokes weed. And it's not like a huge part of his character, but I do want him like he's always just casually smoking weed, which again is something you wouldn't expect a priest to do. However, he does like never curses. He never like takes the Lord's name in vain. Again, he never says like, "Oh my God" or "Oh Jesus Christ." He never does that. He always tries to just be the most positive. He, like I say, he never curses. He never like raises his voice and screams. He always tries to be like just down to earth as much as possible. And like the start of the series, he literally lives in like a shack behind like a church that he doesn't even preach at. He's like his priest friend does there, and he literally lives like in a shack in the back. He's just he's a priest. He definitely takes it. He's never, Rajiv is in his 30s and he's a virgin, and he's like very proud of that. He very stands. He's never seen a woman naked. He's never had impure thoughts. He's never watched porn. He doesn't drink alcohol, at least most of the time. Again, he's kind of hypocritical. So he's not perfect though. Obviously, Rajiv is like a very good small guy. He really gets along. But he isn't really an ideal priest. Rajiv himself as a character understands. Like in the story, he even admits that if he were actually like if another high-ranking church member sees him, they'll probably like defrock him. They'll remove him of his priesthood because he does not fall in line 100% with the like expectations of a priest. So that's kind of Rajiv's whole thing. And like I said, he's from India, and even as a member of the clergy, he still has to do the whole like American test thing, and it's very annoying. He's not a citizen either. He wasn't born in the U.S. He's from India. He's like fluent in like 10 languages. So whenever time, because there's like a lot of story where they go to different countries, he's like just a guy who talks with everyone, and he's just a very cool guy. Like he isn't. Which one thing, like obviously there's the whole like demons and God and stuff like that. Like the characters in the gang know God is real, right? That's like 100%, and yet even like Rajiv is a priest. They're not like religious, Like Rajiv isn't like out preaching to people, telling them like like have you been saved? Like have you been baptized? Like do you accept Jesus as your Lord? No, he doesn't do that. He's just, like I said, Rajiv is a very hypocritical person. There's some things he takes absolutely certain, like again, being celibate, he doesn't have sex, but yet he doesn't like care if people actually believe in God or not. He's just doing his own thing, So hypocritical, again, I guess it's kind of like both a positive and a negative about Rajiv, is that some things he's just cool about and some things he isn't. So That's kind of his whole thing. But still, I still want him to still be a cool guy, you know. Rajiv and Isaac kind of have like a big brother, younger brother relationship. You know, Rajiv is the big brother who Isaac looks up to and thinks he's cool and wants, and he's like super smart and he kind of wants to like be him, you know. A big thing is that Rajiv is very well spoken, so he uses a lot of big words. And a lot of times Isaac just kind of repeats what he says and tries to sound smart also. It's kind of like a character thing. Little funny interactions they have. You know, Rajiv will say something and then later in the day Isaac will say the same thing to someone else because he looks up to Rajiv. Isaac does look up to Rajiv. Which by the way, Isaac, he has like no contact with his family. You know, his parents, it's not that they don't want to talk to him, they just are very like cold and distant with their kids, you know, with Isaac especially. They just don't, they call him up like once every now and then, but they never really ask him how he's doing. Like they don't even know about this whole thing that's going on, you know. So Isaac, he's always been a very lonely person, you know. I don't want to say he doesn't have siblings. I'm not still 100% on that, but he had a lonely childhood. He's just a lonely person. So the fact that he has, you know, people like Rajiv and all these other characters we'll get into, it's like a found family. You know, this gang is a found family. They all have each other now. Like this is Isaac's new family, you know. So he definitely looks up to that. So that's kind of the thing, you know. Isaac, Rajiv, they have like a brother relationship. But Rajiv is the bigger, wiser brother. You know, Isaac is the younger one who looks up to Rajiv. That's their whole thing. The next character is Elijah. Elijah is a white guy. Okay, I want him to be in his early 20s, probably like definitely older than 21. Elijah, as we're getting to the lore stuff, he is a Templar, which you don't know. In real life, the Templars were like this like knights that found the Crusades who were like loyal to the Pope. Like they didn't have a king; they only listened to the Pope. In real life, the Templars like ceased to exist after the end of the Crusades. Right, the Crusades ended. There was no need for like Templar knights anymore. In the world of High Prophet, they still exist, and they're basically like the Catholic Church's version of the CIA. You know, they spy, they have agents infiltrate governments and do all that. Elijah is a Templar, and like most Templars in the world of High Prophet, Elijah is like the illegitimate son of like a high-ranking church member. I think they're called like a bishop or something. So a bishop had an affair with a woman. You know, whole thing about Catholic clergy, they're not allowed to have children. You know, and Elijah being born, like most illegitimate children of bishops, they're strictly put right into the Templars. Elijah, since birth, was trained to be a Templar knight and fight and do all that. You know, so that's his whole thing. Elijah is a Templar. He is sent by the Templars on behalf of the church to go and spy on Isaac and report to them. Elijah, however, decides he doesn't want to just spy on him from like a distance and like watch him with binoculars and report it out. Elijah goes up to Isaac and just tells him, "Hey, man, I've been sent by the church to spy on you, but like we can be friends and I can help you and you can help me. Wouldn't that be cool?" And Isaac's like, "You know what? That would be cool." And so that's kind of Elijah's whole thing. Elijah is he as a Templar, like Elijah isn't even his real name. Elijah doesn't have a name. He only has identities. And this isn't like him going undercover to spy on Isaac isn't the first time. He's been like almost everywhere. He's constantly going on missions. He's lived like 100 lives because he's always changing his name. Because of that, Elijah is also kind of a lonely person. He has no real friends. In fact, he actively goes out of his way to not make friends because if he goes hang out with someone, their person is going to ask more personal questions. They're going to like learn more about Elijah, and they're going to find out that Elijah isn't even a real person. Okay, this is like a fake identity he uses, and then Elijah's going to have to kill him. So Elijah and Isaac, knowing the fact that basically like the only friend, Elijah's only friend is Isaac, and Isaac's only real like male companion friend who isn't like a priest or someone who's like way older than him is Elijah. They're like the only Elijah and Isaac are like the BFFs. They're always together, inseparable, and they're kind of both idiots. Okay, so. Like I said, Elijah's white. He doesn't have to go through the screen. Elijah isn't even born in the U.S. In fact, he doesn't even know where he was born. And yet, even though he's technically an immigrant, he doesn't go through like the whole screening phase because, again, the U.S. in here is low-key racist. And so he uses the fact that he's white to his advantage, basically, But anyway, Elijah's cover is the fact that he's a cop, The Templars sent him to El Paso to spy on Isaac, and as his like secret identity where he used to pass to go through society, he's a cop. He's a state trooper, or I think in Texas, I don't know if there's like different, but I know there's like these called the Texas Rangers. And I'm not talking about the fucking football team. I'm talking about like the actual Texas Rangers, like cops. I want Elijah to be one. He wears like the cowboy hat or the police uniform. He has a cruiser. He's a cop. Again, he's not a very good cop. He doesn't actually care about like arresting people. He's solely doing this job just to like as a cover to hide the fact his real mission. And so he either lets criminals go, or uses his cop to like, again, as a authority figure to like help Isaac get away from like being caught from other cops. which I think about Elijah is very trigger happy. You know, he has no problem killing people. Even he shoots before asking questions. You know, like we ask questions and then shoot. No, Elijah does not ask. He just shoots people. He kills other cops. He has no problem doing that. And he's very like cold about it. He shows no emotion in murder, and in fact, he's like killed so many people before. It unfaces him. But he's not like a psychopath. You know, he's not like some like he likes killing people. It's just for him. It's just something that's so like is like I think for Elijah, killing a dude is like kind of like stepping on a bug. You know, he's done it so many times it doesn't even like bother him. But he's not like he's still a person. He has boundaries. He doesn't kill people who doesn't need to be killed. You know, like no one wants to be killed because he, in his view, have to die. You know, like someone discovered Isaac was doing a crime, they're gonna put him in prison. Well, he can't have that. He's the prophet. He's supposed to kill the Antichrist. You have to kill the dude. That's just how it goes. You know. So that's Elijah's whole thing. Again, Elijah is kind of low key a weirdo. Like Isaac has no friends because he was just an introvert. You know, he wasn't a weirdo. Like Isaac could have conversations with people. He could go to like parties and talk to people. He has no problem socializing. It's just the fact that he just doesn't like doing that. Elijah, he cannot socialize. Okay, Elijah has such a difficult time talking to people, and he's like those type of guys who's like confident, but he's not like he's still awkward. He's like an awkward, confident person. He like overshares. He just doesn't really know. Like he gets too close to people. He's very touchy. Not to say he's like a rapist or anything. He's not like inappropriate. He's just very like I don't know. Like he'll meet you. You'll meet Elijah for the first time. Literally, never see each other. And this guy will already put like his hand over you and call you his best friend. Like he is kind of a weird. Especially again, Elijah especially has a thing where he like I don't know how to say it without sounding like making because I don't want Elijah to be a creep. I just think he's just weird. He's just awkward. But he does also like Isaac has a thing where he easily falls for girls. Elijah also gets like no action. He cannot pull a girl for his life, but also because of some self sabotage. As a Templar, he's not allowed to have like sexual relationships. And so a thing about Elijah, he kind of just like he doesn't want people to know about his personal life. So he does him being socially awkward is kind of on purpose to like free people away from prying onto him. But at the same time, he is just an awkward person. He's very nerdy or geeky, I guess is a better word. Like he's really into like Lord of the Rings and like Star Wars, like all that geeky stuff. Again, I'm probably not going to actually use Star Wars, but he's like into that stuff. He lives in like an apartment. It's just covered with like the just absolute nerd shit. Okay, like that's just the best way to describe it. Like, he's just a nerd. But still, him and Isaac is also kind of nerdy, so they get along with that. They have like shared interests in like movies and stuff, and so they become friends. Elijah is a weirdo, but it's kind of on purpose. It's like he's a weirdo on purpose, but at the same time, he is just a weirdo. But like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. But like, he is purposely a weirdo, but at the same time, he is just naturally a weirdo. And again, when I mean weirdo, I don't mean he's like a creep who like touches people inappropriately. He's just a weirdo, as in he doesn't know how to socialize. And he overtalks, he overshares, he doesn't know personal space. He always gets up to people, and he's low key kind of like, again, he's just low key a weirdo. Okay, that's the best way to describe it. But again, he is still nice. He cares about his friends. He does understand that as the series goes on, he does open up again, like kind of like Isaac. He kind of has a similar character arc where he also kind of learns like it's okay to like open up to people. And it's okay to have friends. Being a Templar isn't everything. And in fact, one thing I want to show is that Elijah doesn't really like being a Templar. He does kind of want to leave the order. The Templar Order, I think it was called. It was kind of like an Assassin's Creed. My Assassin's Creed fans out there. But sometimes he feels like he has to stay because that's the only thing he's ever known. His whole life, he's only ever known this Templars. And so he wants to leave, but he just can't. But we'll get to that eventually. And I guess one thing that I failed to mention about Elijah that I should probably get into because it's a big character trait is that he's a werewolf. Okay, Elijah is a werewolf. He could turn into a wolf. He's a werewolf. So the way werewolves work. Oh God, I'm like really fucking up the words, but the way werewolves work in the High Prophet world is that it's a person who can turn into a wolf, and not like a wolf, like a big actual it's like more like a humanoid wolf. Like it walks on two legs, it has the arms. It's kind of like the more traditional depiction of werewolves. He is still like there, like he isn't some like wild animal. Like Elijah has full control over his wolf form, and he can turn to it whenever he wants. I do want to show the process is painful, so Elijah does kind of try not to, only when like emergencies or whenever he's in like in a situation. Like if he gets shot, he'll just immediately turn into a werewolf. If he feels a sense of danger, his instincts will kick in. He'll just turn into it automatically. But he is in control. That is, except when it's midnight. When it's a full moon. when there's a full moon, Elijah just uncontrollably turns into one. And not only that, but he has like no control. He like turns feral and he starts biting and attacking anything and everyone he sees. So that's like a big no-no. So every time he's like a full moon, he has to be like locked up and chained, or else he's just gonna be a menace. But like I said, besides that, he could turn into a wolf whenever he wants. My lights are fucking up. I'm still gonna keep going. He could turn into a werewolf whenever he wants. It's a painful process. He tries not to. And just like classic werewolf mythology, only like a silver bullet can harm him. He's basically immune to any other things. Like a knife won't like pierce his skin. He's just very strong. You know, regular bullets won't do it. But yeah, he's just a werewolf, very strong, big bites, and he has like, even in his human form, he has like a really great sense of smell. He can easily pack things. He has a great eyesight because, you know, he's a werewolf. Wolves have amazing like field vision, definitely farther. And he's also a bit stronger, but he doesn't have like super strength, but he definitely can like partially lift up a car and fucking, you know, I don't know, he's just strong. Okay, so that's all Elijah's whole thing. And the next character we'll get into is Kelvin. Not Kevin, Kelvin with an L. Kelvin is a zombie, okay? Like and I don't mean a zombie is like he's like some brain dead zombie who wasn't like the Walking Dead, you know, like the brain eating zombies. No, he's intelligent. He's just a person that's been brought back from the dead, but his like body is like already super pale, right? Because, you know, people die, they turn super pale. And in terms of Kelvin's, like if you die and turn back to a zombie, if you have like a body part missing, that's gonna stay missing. You know, like if you get shot and you get brought as a zombie, that part of your brain is still gonna be missing. Um, Kelvin died of like a drug overdose when he was young, and so because his heart doesn't work, and when he got brought back from the dead as a zombie, he has like no heartbeat or like a pulse. You know, he does still eat human flesh though. Like Kelvin is, I guess he wouldn't be a cannibal because he isn't really human. He's a zombie. He still eats. And not just people though, he does eat like raw meat from animals. He has like a very unquenching hunger, but he is still in control. He is like a person. He still has thoughts. He can speak. You know, he can like put on clothes and everything. He just so happens that he's like an undead walking. He's a dead man walking again. You know, and the only reason it happens is because some black magic spell got casted and like a bunch of like people's graves popped up, and Calvin happens to be one of them. So he hangs out with the crew because, you know, they keep him around, especially Rajiv, because Kelvin is only like 15 years old. When he died when he was 15, and he like came back and he's still 15. You know, his body didn't exactly age. It didn't decompose either because, I don't know, I haven't, magic reasons, okay? Like he died pretty recently, okay? So his body wasn't like fully decomposed, or it wasn't even decomposed at all, you know? So Rajiv basically takes Kelvin under his wing, and they kind of have like a father-son relationship also, you know? Rajiv looks out for Kelvin, even like enrolls him in school, and he helps him get like a study because, you know, the thing is, Kelvin doesn't remember. He did have a drug overdose, doesn't remember like how exactly that happened. And so he's kind of like a vengeful spirit, I guess. Like he can't ascend back to the afterlife until, you know, he settled his like anger, I guess. Like until he finds out how he died, then he can actually ascend to heaven and, you know, finally be rid of the body, you know. So that's the whole thing. Kelvin, he's black. I want him to be more of like a light skinned black, you know, like not exactly like mixed, like both of his parents were black, but he's definitely more light skinned. You know, he's more like a brown, you know, or a very dark brown. So he's black. He's 15 years old. He still eats people. He is like, you can't really kill a zombie. Like even if you shoot him in his brain, the bullet would just kind of go through, and he does kind of regenerate, or I guess not regenerate, but like it doesn't really harm him that well. Like you can shoot him a bunch of times, it won't do anything because he's already dead, you know. So Kelvin is kind of just immune to that. He's kind of like a bullet shield, and he can literally rip people's arms off. He doesn't have super strength. He's just kind of very strong, kind of like another Elijah thing, but he eats people, and he's undead, you know. So that's his whole thing. Kelvin is, however, unlike Isaac and Elijah are kind of like social weirdos or losers. Kelvin is very sociable. Okay, like he talks to people. He gets to school. He has friends. He basically builds his life again. You know, Rajiv takes care of him, but when Rajiv takes care of Kelvin, they finally move out of the shack and actually get like a decent little mobile home that they live together. Like Rajiv becomes Kelvin's guardian angel, or not guardian, but like his guardian, his legal guardian. You know, Rajiv adopts Kelvin as his own. He like fakes the documents and everything, which, by the way, is like a real thing. Like, you know, Catholic priests can adopt children and raise them as their kids. That's like a real thing. I just found out not even that long ago. So, before you guys make out, Rajiv is not a pedophile. He's not gay. Okay, Rajiv isn't even straight either. I don't know. Then there's a word for it. Rajiv doesn't have sex. He has no interest in sexual relationships. Okay, he's taking care of Kelvin because, you know, he's a young dude who has no family. His family thinks he's dead. You know, he is dead. His family, they buried him. You know, he literally has no one to go to. So Rajiv just takes care of him because he's just a cool guy like that. So that's the whole thing. Kelvin and Isaac have like a older brother, younger brother situation, whereas Isaac looks up to Rajiv. Kelvin looks up to Isaac, and Isaac doesn't even realize that. He doesn't know that he's like Kelvin's hero. He does look after Kelvin, again, treats him like a younger brother, even unknowingly. And so that's like the whole thing. That's the relationship with him. Kelvin is pretty cool. I want him to portray really into like BMX, like the bike things with bicycles. And yeah, he's just a cool guy. He's very chill. He is kind of like the teenage thing where he just doesn't care about anything. He kind of just goes along with the guy because like he has no one else, so he just kind of hangs out with them. And it's, again, found family. That's his whole thing. So anyway, we'll get to the girls now. Next up is Amber. Amber is a vampire. Okay, in fact, Amber is, I want to depict her as, I want to say like 300 years old, right? She was born, like, some people remember where they were when like 9/11 happened, or even the older generation boomers, they remember where they were when like JFK got shot. Amber remembers where she was when Abraham Lincoln got shot. Okay, so that's her whole thing, is that she's 300, but physically she's like in her mid-20s. So she doesn't really, like, vampires kind of stop aging once they reach their 20s. So she's very young. Amber she's also Mexican. Amber has lived in the US for like, centuries, 300 years old. And yet she still has to go through the screening process because which, by the way, in the world of High Prophet, stuff like demons and vampires are not common knowledge. Okay. Your average person still thinks vampires are like fictional, like God isn't like 100% proven in the world of High Prophet, so it's not like the government knows Amber's a vampire. She just has to fake her documents every now and then because, she puts her down as Mexican. She has to do the screening process. So, again, Kelvin as a zombie, he has to hide the fact he's a zombie. The fact that he's black, but he's very pale, so he comes down as a light skin. They just pass him off as a light skin. And, Elijah's a werewolf. He has to hide the fact that he's a werewolf. Amber's a vampire. She hides the fact that she's a vampire. So Amber, Mexican, average build, average height. She's 300 years old, physically in her 20s. As cringy as this sounds, I do want her to be some sort of like a social media influencer. Like she has like a TikTok, I guess, an Instagram, and she is like kind of like nichely famous, at least in the city of El Paso. Like people probably know her. They see her in the streets because she is kind of like smart. She is sort of famous, like niche internet micro celebrity, at least in the city that it takes place in. So Amber's whole thing is that the vampires High Prophet kind of regular vampire rules, right? She has the two fangs. She has to bite and eat people. She can like float. I know in like other vampire stories, vampires can like turn into like different animals. And in my world, I'm just gonna simplify that, and she can turn into like a bat, and that's it. She can't be in the sun. She'll burn and die. No onions, or I guess not onions, and garlic, stuff like that. She can't enter houses without being invited in first. She does have like super speed and super strength, which is like a real vampire thing. Traditional vampire stories, they have like super speed and super strength. She can like get up a car and throw it. She can like fucking zip and zap through around. She is, however, like in the world of High Prophet, there are different clans made up of vampires, all like the same parent. So Amber has like a mom and dad. She has like 100 siblings. And which, yeah, it's a joke, the stereotype that Mexicans have a bunch of kids, but like she has 100 siblings. It's her clan. They live in El Paso. Fun fact: El Paso is like considered one of the sunniest cities in America. So the fact that vampires live there, her clan are Christian vampires, meaning stuff like crosses and icons of like saints and stuff, Bible verses don't hurt her like regular vampires. If you put up a cross to a vampire, that shit will burn them. It'll hurt them. Amber doesn't. In fact, she wears like a very big like a necklace of like the Virgin Mary because stuff like that doesn't affect her. Her family were blessed like centuries ago. And because of the other vampire clans hate them for that because they're considered like traitors to their species. But it doesn't matter. So Amber is sort of that, like religious figures. Religious symbols do not affect her like regular vampires would. But still, Amber is very sweet. She's like whereas Isaac is introverted, she's very what's the fuck? I forgot the word. Is it outverted? No, it's like introverted. Extrovert. She's very extroverted. She loves constantly going to like house parties. She's always, doing something in the city. Yeah, she's a social media influencer. She has like our little entourage of friends, and she literally has. She likes to party. She likes to go out. She likes to do things. Unlike Isaac, And I compare that to Isaac because in the first part of the story, the first 1/3, Isaac and Amber actually date, and I'd say date in parentheses because there's not really dating. They go on dates, but they're not boyfriend and girlfriend. Like they're more, I guess, like friends with benefits. So the whole thing is that Isaac saves Amber from an attack from other vampires, right? and as a sign of gratitude, she like offers to have sex with Isaac because she, as a vampire, she knows Isaac is like a virgin, and he is. And so after that, they do it, and then Amber kind of be like, "Hey, you're cool. I like you. We can be sort of a thing. We can like be friends with benefits," and they do. And Isaac, and when I said Isaac easily falls for women, that's the thing. Amber does kind of set up this like the boundary is that she doesn't want like a serious relationship. It's very casual things. I guess not really friends with benefits. It's like a casual relationship. They can go on dates, they can do the deed, but it's not something serious. Like Isaac shouldn't have the expectation that they're gonna get married. But Isaac does grow the expectation. Amber likes Isaac. Isaac is in love with Amber. Okay, and a big part of that is Isaac has to learn that and I do want to show it isn't entirely his fault. Like Amber does kind of lead him on. But like the whole reason why Amber doesn't want a serious relationship is that she's a vampire. She is immortal. Isaac isn't. He will grow old and he will die. And Amber doesn't want to go through that. She has had lovers in the past. By the way, Amber has like kids. She has like a lot of kids. Like she's had lovers in the past. She's gotten pregnant in the past. She has plenty of kids. So they just kind of casually show. In fact, one of her Amber's daughters is actually like some famous like pop singer, not a real one, like a fiction one. Kind of like she's basically like a Karol G type singer. So just a fun fact I want to throw that Amber does have a lot of kids. It's just casually dropped. They kind of show up, not really. But again, Amber, she likes Isaac. She would be down for a serious relationship, but like on the condition that Isaac turn into a vampire so they can actually be together. And Isaac doesn't want to do that because he doesn't want to turn into a vampire. Like he likes going out on the day. He doesn't want to like feast on the blood of people. And it's not just people. Also like vampires can also like drink the blood of like animals. And Amber does do that because being Christian vampires, they don't want to kill people unnecessarily. Sometimes Amber does go on the streets and she like purposely puts herself in situations where guys would try to like, assault her, but she's a vampire, so she can easily like overpower them and kill and drink their blood. And for her, that's fine because, they were going to do bad stuff. So it's okay to kill bad people, And by the way, yeah, vampires, like if you throw like, Amber is like an high average build, right? If some grown man throw a punch in Amber's face, his hand will shatter, like his knuckles will break because vampires cannot be harmed by any regular means. Like if you shoot a gun, the bullet will be like Superman. Like the shit would just kind of flatten and it wouldn't hurt her, Sitting a nice little break. You can't kill vampire only with specific things, like holy objects or like a stake in the heart. That's basically it. But yeah, Amber, Isaac, the whole part, again, the story is split into like 3 major parts. The first part is, every part is determined by a relationship Isaac has, and this one is with Amber. And so it's kind of the whole thing, Isaac and Amber do get along, they're both Mexican, they get along, they like each other, but there's like whole thing, it's basically Isaac's first love, and he experiences like heartbreak and he experiences the relationships with Amber, someone who's very well experienced in relationships, and so that's like a big thing, And the end of it, they decide to break up because they realize, Isaac wants something more, and and Amber doesn't want to, and Isaac doesn't want to turn to a vampire, and they decide but it's not a bad breakup. They still decide to be friends, and I want to show that even going into the story, they still kind of like each other, but they know they can't be. It just won't work out. Amber, if she wants something serious, he has to fully commit to it, and Isaac just doesn't want to turn into a vampire and commit to that. He wants something serious, but it's kind of like a thing. So that's the whole thing. But regardless, Amber, very out there. She's very friendly. She isn't like a lot of vampires in media are portrayed as like goths. They wear all black. I do not want Amber to be that. Amber is very. She likes to wear very revealing clothing. She is very like I guess a loud personality. She loves attention. She's like a queen bee. If Amber was in high school, she'd be like the popular girl cheerleader type. So she loves attention. She loves people complimenting her. She isn't like a goth at all. Like I don't want to portray that as that's like way too cliche. The goth vampire. She's like the complete opposite of that. She's like a valley girl. So that's her whole thing. And yeah, anyway, that's enough about Amber. We'll go into Sybil. Sybil, she is a vampire hunter. She comes from like Sybil's family for generations have been like not just vampire hunters, but also demon hunters. So she's like an expert on that, on like combating, demons and vampires. So Sybil is also black. I want her to be very dark skinned, like if blackness from a scale of Zendaya in terms of light skin to say Lupita Nyong'o in terms of dark skin, Kelvin will be a Zendaya type skin. Sybil will be like a Lupita Nyong'o, Sybil is a vampire demon hunter. Her whole thing is that since demons and vampires are usually, they get hurt by holy objects, religious symbols. Sybil is like covered from like hit, not like actually, but like her body is covered in tattoos of like crosses and Bible verses and like images of like different saints and Jesus and stuff like that. Everywhere except for like her face and like her hands. It's covered with tattoos of that. Like it's literally something. You know those like Japanese like yakuza tattoos with like the dragons on their back? That's her, but with like fucking the Virgin Mary back there and like the Jesus and stuff like that. She's covered in tattoos, and because by doing so, that makes her like untouchable, right? Like if Amber was a regular vampire, she could not physically get near Sybil, or else it will literally hurt her. But that's the whole thing. Like Sybil is an expert in like hand to hand combat. You know, she's with guns. That's her big thing. She's like a very gun girl. You know, she loves guns. Always in the shooting range. She owns a lot of guns. She's very into that. And Elijah also uses a lot of guns. I want to show that Elijah is kind of a gun nut also, but Sybil is like way to the extreme. Sybil, however, is very like sarcastic and a pessimist. You know, she's seen a lot of fucked ups because she is a vampire demon, but she's also just like a bounty hunter in general, and she like carries out. She was like for a while she was a hit woman, and she carried out hits for like mafia and gangster types, and so she grew very nihilistic because of that. And but you know she hangs out with the gang. She grows to appreciate life, also kind of like similar story arc to Isaac. But a thing about character trait about Sybil is that she kind of has like the Deborah from Dexter, where she has like a very she curses a lot. She says a lot of bad words, you know, and that's like a big character trait is that like every sentence she says has like the F word in it, or even she creates up like these creative like ways of insulting people, and but still, even though all that, she's still again nice person, gets along. Sybil and Amber are actually like BFFs, and they're like always going out together. Sybil's also very socially active person. She is a bit older though. Sybil, I want to be like in her late 20s, which I mean, obviously Amber's like 300, she's older, but I mean like natural physicality, Amber's like in her early 20s. Or yeah, no, wait, no. Elijah is in his early 20s, Amber is in her mid 20s, and Sybil is in her late 20s. So she's a bit more mature than like Amber and more of the other cast. And after the breakup between Isaac and Amber, well, who do you think Isaac goes on to date later? It's with Sybil. They start dating, and their relationship, they don't start dating until like the third of the story, like not even the second third, and it's because the whole is like Amber, like Sybil and Amber are BFFs, and Sybil doesn't want to go for her ex boyfriend because that's kind of like, well, no, friends don't do that, but like Sybil and Isaac do like each other, and Amber doesn't care, like in her mind, Isaac was never really her boyfriend to begin with, so the story progresses, the two like each other, and they ultimately learn like it's okay to date, it's okay that they like each other, and they do work. I do want to say Sybil is like much older. Like Isaac is 19. Sybil is probably like 28 or 29. She is like 10 years older than Isaac. But again, another character trait about Isaac is like he likes older girls. Okay, like physically, Amber wasn't that much older than Isaac. Maybe like 5 years older. But obviously, she's like 2 centuries older than him. But like Isaac doesn't see that. In fact, Sybil being older than him, he likes that, so that's the thing. And Sybil's obviously a bit insecure about like, she's way older dating a younger guy. Usually it's the other way around, the older guy dating the younger girl, but they grow to like each other, Isaac and Sybil become like the series' power couple. They like get together. I don't want to do any of those like breakup or like third, I guess kind of was like a love triangle with, Amber, Sybil, and Isaac, but like once they get together, they stay together. Okay. Like they are the power couple of the series, and honestly, they get along really well. By the time Isaac has become more sociable, we get to Sybil, and I just say Sybil is very outgoing, but she does enjoy like outgoing only for like special occasions. Like she goes because Amber wants to, but Sybil is totally fine, and she likes staying at home also and just cozying up, watching a movie, something that Isaac would really much rather do. And so they do hit it off way better. And yeah, that's just basically it. I know this probably fails the Bechdel test. That one thing that one feminist created, that if a female character's whole story is centered around a man, then you as a man have failed at writing female characters. But we're just gonna ignore that because I think they're still strong female characters, and I am a proud feminist. Okay, so yeah, that's that thing. Next up is Cecile, or just Cece as she's called. Cecile is probably like 18 years old. She is a witch. She can cast spells. She has magic. She grew up in a cult. So Cecile's whole thing is that when she was being groomed by the cult to be the bride of the Antichrist, like the Antichrist needs a wife, and so she was groomed to be it. But obviously, Cecile doesn't want to be the bride of the Antichrist. In fact, Cecile isn't even into dudes. No, Cecile is gay. She's a lesbian. And not only that, but she was like abused by the cult, both physically, mentally, and sexually. And so one day she like, because the way to use black magic in the world of High Prophet is in order to access black magic, you have to like carve a pentagram, almost a swastika, but like you have to carve a pentagram into your body. Cecile carves one into like the back of her left hand, like carves it out, the circle, and then does the star thing, and that gives her access to black magic, and she kills everyone in her cult, and she escapes, and she links up with Isaac because she uses their magic to find the High Prophet. But yeah, like a witch, Cecile can cast spells. The Ex Mortis, the Satanic Bible that Rajiv had, not only is it an encyclopedia of demons, but it's also like a spell book. And so like Rajiv and Cecile kind of like they share the book, and she can cast spells. Magic isn't, however, like Harry Potter where you can just like throw a spell and it cast something. It's more to do with like body horror. Like she can cast a spell that can like call like tentacles to come out and attack people. She can like open her mouth and a million spiders can come out. She can like fucking like all of her spells have to do with body horror. Because I'm very into like body horror. That's like my favorite like subgenre of horror. And there's like really a lot of body horror in this. And Cecile is like the go-to for that. She could still cast regular spells. Like Harry Potter type shit, but like a lot of her magic has to do with body horror. She can like grow different arms. That's the thing, is that Cecile has like 4 eyes, so she has her 2 regular eyes. She has the 3rd eye in her forehead that only opens, and it gives her like full access to like it's kind of like a sainthood, but not really sainthood. Like when Isaac reaches sainthood, because he reaches a point of like enlightenment where he has like no hatred in his, like he has no hating bone in his body. He's completely at peace with like the universe. Cecile is kind of the opposite of that. She kind of like it's like undeserving sainthood, like an evil version, like a demonhood. Basically, she can like open her 3rd eye, and she grows like a million different arms, and she becomes like this unstoppable black magic. She just like destroy the world. It's very powerful. Like out of everyone there, Cecile is easily the most powerful member because I think her magic is just so untamed. Like magic in the world of High Prophet, there's no rules to it. She can really just do whatever she wants, but to a limit. It's all like her, like every magic spell she casts does like damage to her psyche, and she can easily like pass out if she does too much, and it causes her to like unironically have like brain damage or like pop a brain vessel. So every time she does use magic, it is dangerous. So, but still, that's what she does. Cecile is Native American. Specifically, I want her to be like Comanche, some like group that's native to Texas, the state. Like I said, she's like 18 years old. She is goth. Okay, like I know again, goth witch is another cliche, but like I just figured it just fits. Like Cecile is like she's like introverted, but like even more than Isaac is. Like she literally hates going outside her room, and she lives with like Isaac in his shitty apartment. She refuses to ever leave, and she hates the idea of simply even like going out and like, asking the McDonald's cashier for food. She's just like she grew up in a cult. She was literally never interacted with normal people, and so for her that's like impossible. But she still goes through it. She's not exactly like a femcel, but she definitely her room is very gross. Okay, like she does not have the best of standards, but still very sweet, very nice laid girl. Definitely a lot more melancholic. I think the word is like a misanthrope, where she just sees no reason to be happy. The world sucks, life sucks. There is no meaning to it. There's no meaning to life. But again, she grows and learns that there is a meaning, and so that's a big thing. Cecile and Isaac kind of have like a older brother, younger sister relationship. Similar to like Kelvin. Cecile doesn't really look up to Isaac, but Isaac definitely wants to like. He sees himself in her. Like when Cecile grew up in the cult, she actually tried killing herself. She did the whole sliding the wrist, but obviously she was saved. And the fact that she was suicidal, and even leaving the cult coming, she still has like that headspace. That's something like Isaac, because Isaac was all still recovering from that. And so him and Cecile kind of have this connection. They both kind of understand each other of this like negative headspace they're in, And so Isaac, he cares a lot for Cecile. He definitely always wants to like, help and like, I don't say protect because, if anything, Cecile is like protecting him. And Cecile definitely sees that, she definitely feels like a connection to Isaac, and they're definitely super close, like they're not, again, because, Cecile's gay, and, Isaac is with like Amber and then later Sybil. They never date, but like they're definitely super close with one another, and they always worry about one another, like again, it's like a sibling, brother and sister relationship. They do care a lot about each other. But yeah, that's whole Cecile's thing. The next character is Misery. Misery, the word is misery. Her name is Misery. Misery is a demon from hell. Okay, she's actually a daughter of Satan. However, unlike the Antichrist, who's the son of Satan and the son of a human woman, her mom was like a human who was sent to hell, and then Satan, forced himself on her, and she gave birth to Misery. In fact, she is named Misery because that's misery is the only thing that her mom experienced when giving birth to her. So Misery hates Satan. She hates her dad because he has brought nothing but pain and suffering to her life. And so she decides to escape to hell, to Earth, and help the Isaac, just to kill the Antichrist, just to piss off her dad. So that's her whole thing. And the way demons look in the world of High Prophet is they're like the classic like devil look, right? They have like the deep red skin. They have like the two horns. They have like the little devil tail. Satan himself is like how Satan looks in South Park, even has the goat legs. Misery doesn't have that. I think the goat legs is like exclusively thing to Satan only. But like Misery she has like her skin color is literally like a deep red. She has horns that grow, and she has to like, cut them off. And she has a pyrokinesis. Like not every demon knows pyrokinesis, the ability to like shoot fire and control fire, but she does. It's like her specialty. And so she has like a thing where Misery hates being touched like without her consent. So anytime someone like bumps into her or like touches her, they like burst into flames because there's just something she can do. She's also immune to fire. So if you light a fire on her, it won't affect her. But like she can shoot fireballs. She can either turn into like a bomb and just explode and cause like a giant fire explosion. And she can also just pierce through. It's fire. Like Zuko from the Avatar: The Last Airbender. That's basically what she can do. That's her whole thing. Misery, however, has never been to her, so she doesn't understand, like, at least in the beginning of the story, doesn't know like the rules, like the expectations of society. She just goes in and she needs to be taught the fact that she has to, shower, and that she has to, she can't just say things to people. She has to, there's a whole thing to it. Misery, however, also doesn't understand like love. And I say that because she and Cecile kind of have a thing going. Like Cecile likes Misery. Misery like forces Cecile out. And she's like the only one who's like brave enough or brazen enough to like tell Cicely what she needs to hear. Like Isaac wants to help out, but he's still like very, like he sugarcoats a lot when he tries to speak to Cecile because he doesn't want to like, get her upset. But Cecily just says it. And Cecile kind of appreciates Misery. And kind of like, again, like Isaac and Amber, Cecile grows to love Misery, but Misery has a hard time understanding like what is love. She's never experienced love in her life. And again, that's something Cecile relates to. She grew up in a cult, she was never really given love either. So they bond over that, and they do end up becoming a couple. Misery and Cecile date, and they end up also becoming like a power couple. They stay together, and Isaac and Sybil are like the power couple, the straight power couple. Cecile and Misery are the gay power couple, the lesbian power couple. Okay, and Misery's age, I mean, she's unknowable. In hell, there is no concept of time, so she has no clue what day she was born. Physically, again, someone probably in like their 18, 19, 20, around that. But yeah, she has no clue. Her age is literally unknowable. And so she might be older than them, but she might be younger. Who knows? But yeah, she's never been on Earth. Pyrokinesis. She's very like, she doesn't beat around the bush. She doesn't think before she speaks. And whereas Elijah was awkward for like, not really purposely, by not knowing personal space, Misery is just unironically just doesn't care what people think, and she will literally say and do whatever she wants. She just doesn't really, again, in the beginning of the story, she doesn't understand like what the expectations of society, but as she grows, she does, and she grows to appreciate Earth. In fact, by the end of the series, she decides to actually stay on Earth and to stay with Cecile, and they become a thing, And while Misery is like a demon, she does have like the ability to like transform into at least have a human appearance. She's not actually human; like her horns still exist, but you just can't see them. So if you accidentally bump into her, you can still feel the horns. You just can't see them though. And in her human like form, she's like Asian. I want to be like East Asian, like like Chinese or Japanese, something like that. And she looks human, but that's kind of like just a cover, and the cover doesn't last all day. I think there's like a time limit to it, and so she does always revert back to like her demon red form because that's just her natural look. So that's Misery. Then there's Constance. Constance is Isaac's guardian angel. She's been with him since the day he was born. She's basically like his mother because that's the relationship they have. Isaac and Constance have a mother-son relationship. She always protective. She's like an angel. She has the wings. She has the spell. She can like pray and it can like heal him from any damage, including the rest of the group. Everyone can see and speak to her, but only Isaac is can physically touch her. And she's the mom of the group. She's like kind of corny in her sense of humor. She's very sweet. She kind of like Rajiv, doesn't swear, doesn't do anything. And she's kind of like innocently naive about things. It's not that she like just dumb. It's just that she has a very like hopeful view of the world. Whereas like a lot of characters have like negative views of the world. Constance is just unapologetically happy. She always sees the good in things, and she never wants to like bring down. She's always bringing like the group spirit up because she's just so optimistic. And she's white. There's like two, right? There's two black characters, two Mexican characters, two Asian, right? Regime's technically South Asian. There's two white characters, Elijah and Constance. She's like the pitch perfect, the blonde, blue eyes type thing. Again, she's age unknowable. Angels don't have, they would never really have the day they were born. But she definitely, again, someone in like their early 30s, like a Rajiv. And she's the mom of the group and very sweet. And that's why she dies. Okay. In fact, after the first arc, well, I guess we'll get into it, but like she does die in the story. And so, yeah, those are the good guys. We'll get to the other good guys later, but I see this video is already long enough, so we're just going to speed run through the rest. So the bad guys, President Anders, he's the Antichrist. His mouth can open kind of like the Predator, like his mouth opens like 4 ways. I want to do something like that, and he has like this long tongue. Anders is low-key a cannibal. He eats people, and he exclusively only eats people. He's also very sadistic and cruel. He like enjoys inflicting pain on others. He treats everyone like shit. He doesn't care about anyone except himself. He regularly like Anders is supposed to be like the perfect embodiment of like those like sleazy playboy businessmen, celebrities who later turn into politicians, kind of like a Trump, but not really a Trump figure. He's more like a young Trump. Again, whenever time he's on camera, he has like a big smile, like the Mr. Beast smile. But secretly, he hates everyone. He doesn't care if America succeeds. He doesn't want to like fix the economy. He doesn't want to fix anything. In his mind, nothing will matter because his dad saying will come and he'll just destroy everything. So he doesn't care about anything. Anders isn't racist, but he surrounds himself by like racist other people because as the Antichrist, he feeds off hatred. And so, I mean, what's more hateful than a racist? Like a neo-Nazi. So he does that. He doesn't actually care about like white supremacy or anything. He just does because that's what he feeds off. At least, like he physically feeds off people, but like there's that. Anders love Cecile, and he wants to like get her to be his bride. Cecile wants obviously nothing to do with him, but he's kind of delusional like that. And he thinks highly of himself. He fucking sadistic. He's cruel. I want him to be unapologetically evil. Like those bad guys in stories, they're always trying to make him like sympathetic. They give him like a sad backstory, like the Joker, like he was bullied by society, he fell into bad. Anders has zero redeeming qualities, but he is truly an evil person who has no redeeming qualities, and is just the biggest piece of shit you will ever meet in your life. And so that's his whole thing. And all the bad guys are white because white people are evil. So anyway, next up is the vice president, also known as the false shepherd. He's kind of known by the two. Just like Anders doesn't have a first name, the vice president doesn't have a name. He's either always referred to as the vice president, Mr. Vice President, or what our good guys call him, the false shepherd, because he is the false shepherd. He's supposed to be the embodiment of like the super Christian old like Republican politicians who always talk about the Bible. He's a huge hypocrite though, right? He preaches about the Bible, and at the same time, he's like a womanizer who like sleeps with all these girls and like abandons them. He also like regularly drinks alcohol. He is everything that like a good Christian would not be, even though he like acts and preaches like he is one. He's just a guy who uses the Bible. He's like a mega church pastor. He just uses the Bible for personal gain. He doesn't actually believe in what he says. And he knows Anders is the Antichrist. He knows he's the false shepherd, and it's his job to praise him and make sure other people believe him. That's his whole thing. Again, I don't want him to be like an old like Mike Pence type situation. He's like bald and has like long gray hair. He is physically like tough though. He's like buff, and he does know how to fight. And he has like Misery has one pentagram. He has two, so he makes him even more powerful to like black magic. And he's just a very tough guy. Okay, so he's kind of like the second final boss, right? But yeah, he glazes Anders. He knows Anders is the Antichrist. He knows what he's doing, and he loves it. Okay. So next up, we have these three members of government. We have Carl Tuckerson, which you couldn't tell by the name. He's a parody of Tucker Carlson. Carl Tuckerson is like, it's not Fox News. So I'm not going to call it that. I'll call it like Wolf News or some shit. But he's like the main anchorman for a news channel. All he does 24/7 is just run propaganda, glazing President Anders, like the best thing president ever, Like, whenever he also spins the stories to make the Prophet Gang look bad. So, like, the Prophet Gang end up killing, like, a cult of, like, white supremacists, Christians, or whatever. Carl Tuckerson will spin the story and be like, oh, radical left lunatics murder innocent churchgoers who are just, expressing their freedom of speech. Though he always finds a way to make them look bad. Carl Tuckerson doesn't know that Anders is the Antichrist, though. He just unironically glazes him because he's just a grifter who wants to, like, spread divide and hate so you can, like, profit from it. And he's basically the propaganda machine of the regime, right? The authoritarian regime. Next up is Laura Green. She's a parody of all those, like, MAGA Republican women who also glaze Trump and just are, like, evil. Her name is basically a parody of Laura Loomer, who's like Trump's like personal aide, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who isn't really MAGA anymore, but still, I mean, she's still basically MAGA, right? Laura Greene is like she is the White House press secretary, and she also helps him in like she's like Anders' private secretary, basically. She like helps him whenever she can. She's like the one who gets the information. You know, she's I said White House press secretary, but honestly, I might make her like Secretary of Homeland Security or some like head of the CIA, something like that. You know, I haven't decided 100% what her position is, but she has like a position of power like that. Laura Greene is unironically in love with Anders, and she's seen Anders like eat people. She's seen him, like she's seen the vice president with the pentagram, but yet she chooses to like ignore that and pretend she didn't see it because she unironically does believe in Anders's. She's in love with him. She wants to have sex and marry Anders. Anders doesn't love her. He is incapable of love it because the only person he loves is himself. Anders doesn't want to steal because he loves her. He wants to steal because he's her property or she's his property. She is his bride and he owns her, and he just wants it just for the power of it. But yeah, Laura Greene's whole thing is she glazes. She's some powerful position, and she's like a parody of all those MAGA Republican women who just glaze Trump and are awful. Next one is Hesh Miller. Hesh Miller is a parody of like all those like alpha male like fucking Andrew Tate type thing. He's the Secretary of Defense, which I guess is now Secretary of War. So stupid name. And his name is a parody of like Stephen Miller, who I think is like the head of ICE or something like that. And of Pete Hegseth, Hesh Hegseth, who's the Secretary of Defense or War, whatever the fuck. Yeah, he's like a parody. He's like super. He tries to be super macho. He wants to be like an alpha male. Hesh is secretly gay though, which I mean, of course, Andrew Tate is secretly gay. Let's be honest. And he also hates like women. He's like very misogynistic. And he's also racist, okay? Like him and Laura Greene are both just unironically racist. And yeah, he uses the military for his own personal gain. Miller doesn't know Anders is the Antichrist, and he doesn't care if he does know, right? Like he's doing his own thing. He only wants the power, and he wants to feel powerful. He wants to feel like a man, even though he's secretly gay and can't admit it. So that's this whole thing. I want Carl Tuckerson, Laura Greene, and Hesh Miller. I want to represent, that monkey thing, where like see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. They kind of represent that thing, position of power. They just, add into the regime, and then in the story, they do not. Things happen to them. But besides that, there's also Natalie Cruz. She's in a parody of anything specifically. Rather, she's like a caricature of like those like Republican MAGA politicians who don't like Trump, but they understand that they have to glaze him because if you want to succeed in the Republican Party, you have to glaze Trump. That's just how it is, And so Natalie Cruz is kind of like that. She's like works for Anders. I think I want to make her like the Secretary of State or Speaker of the House, some other high-ranking position. She doesn't like Anders. She fucking hates him. But at first of the story, she kind of like enables him because she wants position of power. But she later learns that Anders is the Antichrist, and she immediately like changes sides, and she begins like leaking information to the Prophet gang. She makes contact with them, and she helps them like escape whenever they get close to capturing them. Because I guess I didn't explain it, but in order for Anders to open the portal to hell and allow Satan to cross over, he needs to like sacrifice Isaac in some ritual, like use his blood in his like gut in his heart to open the portal. And so, while you think the story would be like Isaac has to like hunt down and find Anders, no, it's the other way around. Anders has to find and hunt down Isaac, or else he's never gonna get anything done. And so while Anders is looking for him, Isaac is like training and ready to meet him. So that's kind of the thing. So Natalie Cruz helps him out and escapes. Again, she's not a parody of anyone specific. I just came up with the name on the spot, and that's her. She's a good guy. She doesn't make it long, Then there's also Elias Tobias. That's a funny name. I like that one. He's a parody of all those like tech CEO billionaires, specifically like Elon Musk, who have like Elias Tobias has a god complex. He thinks he's like humanity's savior. That like AI, the machines he built, the technology he built, will save humanity, and he will be seen as like a god amongst men. And he thinks he's like the smartest person in the world. He likes to believe that he's actually like calling the shots, that he has like Anders under his ring, or I guess like under his thumb. But in reality, Anders has Elias Tobias. Like Elias is low key an idiot, and he's only successful because he just knew the right people. But yeah, Elias Tobias is also racist. He like funds white supremacist groups, and like I said, he suffers a superiority complex, a god complex, and he just thinks he's like this. He's the god of X-Men. So that's this whole thing, Then there's Seraphim Vale, also known as Father Sarah. Seraphim Vale is like the cult leader. He's the leader of the cult that Cecile grew up in. It's like a sex cult, like he traffics 6 young girls. He's basically like a stand-in for Jeffrey Epstein. And Seraphim Vale that was going to traffic Cecile to Anders. And there's a whole parody. We'll get into it later, but like Seraphim Vale, which is a great name. I think that's a really cool name. Seraphim Vale. He's also known as Father Sarah. He's like the classic cult leader, like Charles Manson type thing, He knows it's bullshit. He's like, he just does it because he just wants to have sex with all these young girls, and he's a predator, and he's like evil. He doesn't care about other people, and he's an enabler. He's just the whole thing. And then there's Premier Potishkin. Potishkin is a parody of like Vladimir Putin and all those like Eastern European dictators. He's like the dictator of Russia. And Potishkin, well, I only added him because he does play a big role later on in the story, but okay, I'll just see it for that. Oh yeah, then in the good guys, there's Noah and Agnes. Noah was actually the high prophet before Isaac, like the generation before Isaac. Noah was the high prophet, and Agnes was his guardian angel. And by the time of like the series starts, Noah is like homeless because he completed his mission, and he doesn't want to kill anymore. He's just waiting to die, so he's just kind of roaming as a drifter across America as homeless. He doesn't like own a house. He doesn't do anything, and he doesn't defend himself either. He like literally he lets himself also get beaten because he just doesn't see a point. He kind of wants to die because he feels like his mission is saved, but he understands he can't kill himself because he probably still has more to do. So he does help out Isaac. He gives him advice and he helps out. I'm gonna add him because he does play a big role later on. And there's also Lily, another bad guy, the final one. Again, I'm gonna save her for last because we'll get into it. So I went into the characters, and now we're gonna get into specific storylines that are just. I'm not gonna go into deep detail into it, but I'm just gonna like give a brief summary of it, because again, I came up with these. I just want to talk about it. So, like I said, the story is split into 3 parts. Each part is called a saga. There's the casual saga. The casual saga, it just follows more like a slice of life, I guess. Like it's more episodic. Like Anders and Isaac, like and then the casual saga, Anders is still a businessman who's running for president. Like this is an election year, So he doesn't know about Isaac as prophet. He can't even find him. He doesn't have the resources. And Isaac knows Anders. He's running for president, but he figures, it's better to train rather than going right into it. They still have at least a couple months before the election. And so the casual saga is called that because it's more of like Isaac and his gang going into like misadventures while they train and wait to fight Anders. So it's casual because the great sense of like the scale of like timing, because you have to kill the Antichrist, it isn't there yet. They're not like actively a rush to kill him just yet. Like this is the training arc. This is the training saga, and we do have specific arcs to that. The first major arc, and I'm not gonna give all of them. This is just a couple that I came up with and I like. So we'll get to it. The first is the vampire arc. This is where like most of the main cast is introduced. Basically, is that like I said, Amber's whole vampire clan is hated because they got blessed, became Christian, and so when Isaac finds Amber, she's being attacked by these other vampires. That's because basically all the other neighboring clans in like Texas have declared war and teamed up to kill Amber's clan. And so the major first arc is the vampire wars. Isaac and then later Sybil and Cecile get along and they have to fight all these vampires. They fight these like ones called like daywalkers. They're vampires who are like immune to the sun. They can like they can walk during the day. They don't die from the sun. They're called daywalkers, and that's like the first group that they fight off. They fight this other one. I call them like Nosferatu, named after like the monster vampire from the movie. These are vampires who like completely rejected their humanity. Like vampires still look exactly human, right? Just except the fangs. Nosferatu have rejected that. They literally look like monsters. They look like Nosferatu. They're pale. They have like bald. They look more like the vampires in Penny Dreadful is another show. They look that. The vampires who've rejected their humanity have come completely into their vampirism, and they're more like monsters. They're still intelligent, but they're very feral and very violent. And the third one, rule of 3. I'm just going to give 3 examples of each arc. Like, so I already gave 3 examples. It's the rule of 3. They also fight this like neo-Nazi white supremacist vampires, and it's being led by Amber's ex-boyfriend, who isn't even white. He's like from El Salvador or Guatemala or some shit. He's brown, and yet he's like a white supremacist, and he leads a group of like vampire white supremacists, and they like try to cast a spell to revive Hitler, but he's like a zombie form. And you might ask, how the hell did they get Hitler's body? Just don't question it, okay? So they have the zombie, but Hitler shot himself in the brain, so his brain's basically missing. And so like zombie Hitler is basically like Frankenstein. He can't even speak, he can't even walk. He's just like, and Amber's ex-boyfriend glazes the fuck out of him. So, and again, Isaac has to fight him. It's like this big thing, and so that's the vampire arc. Then there's the Mexico arc. That's when like the gang Isaac, has to meet with like his immigrant officer to report. Well, Isaac misses his deadline, and so he gets like captured by ICE, and he's like, he's this universal version of ICE, and he's deported to Mexico. And so the whole gang has to go and find him and like bring him back, And while there, Isaac, he's deported to like a small town he's not even from. He learns that like the town is being terrorized by this like violent drug cartel, led by like some like violent drug lord. And so Isaac decides to like save the community and just get rid of them and kill them. The rest of the gang join up and they help out. They kill the cartel. There's another story arc where like they help out. Like they're leaving the town and they walk up to another like border town, and they learn that one has like an infestation of chupacabras. The classic, like, I don't know if you're like white people know about this, but chupacabras are this like a monster from like Latino folklore. And I don't know exactly what chupacabras are in like the traditional stories. I just know they're like weird lizard dog things. But in the High Prophet universe, chupacabras are just vampire dogs. They're like, wild, I guess more like coyotes. They're like wild coyotes who somehow became vampires, and they just attack and they suck the blood out of everyone. So there's like infestation of them. There's like thousands of them, and the gang decides to clear them out to help this other small town before they go to like the big city and cause a big problem. And but that arc ends with them actually going to the U.S. They cross illegally because xenophobic, but they end up getting captured by like border patrol, and they get put into like an immigration detention center, which is basically a concentration camp, right? And this universe, like even in real life, they're concentration camps. People are like tied up. They have like the orange jumpsuit and the fucking black bags, like Guantanamo Bay. And so Isaac and his group have to like escape from this fucking concentration camp. They have to like free the other people, and they kill the warden, who's like this other dude who sold his soul to the devil. He has the pentagram, but he has like in his eye, like his iris in his eye is literally a pentagram. Don't ask how he got there. And so they free the people and they go back to the U.S. and his whole thing. And the final arc of the Casual Saga is what I call the terrorist cult. And that one, like Seraphim Veil gets murdered by Cecile at the beginning of the story when she like kills him after accessing the black magic. But he gets revived by his other cult leaders as like a zombie because they can do that in this universe. Kelvin, that happened to Kelvin also. And so he continues his cult. And Isaac and the gang decide that Anders is like projected to win his presidency, and they think that it's easier to kill someone if they're not president. So, and since Anders has connections with Seraphim Veil, who's like this pedophile who runs a sex cult trafficking young girls, they go kill Seraphim. They get evidence that implicates Anders, and they release it to the public. That doesn't do shit though, But before we get to that, when they're doing that, they also run into these other armed groups. For instance, they run into like this group of communists who also want to kill Anders, and you think the Isaac and the gang will like team up with them. But as our town turns out, these communists are not good people because they also want to kill anyone who makes like they consider a capitalist scum, and that literally includes like all the small business owners and like literally anyone they just don't like. And so Isaac and the gang realize like, yeah, these guys are not on our side. These guys are just as fucked up as the government. So they also have to fight and kill them. And then they also run into like basically ISIS, like this group of Islamic extremists who also want to stage like this huge terrorist attack. And like El Paso, or I guess like Houston, I haven't decided exactly where like the election is going to be held at. Basically, Anders is going to give a speech, and they want to stage a terrorist attack. And they realize again Isaac and the gang want to kill Anders, but they don't want to like murder innocent people in this time. So they stop ISIS. And a big plot twist: turns out ISIS aren't actually a group of Islamic extremists. They're actually like Israeli Mossad, like the IDF Israel thing. They're Israeli soldiers who are pretending to be ISIS so they can stage like a false flag operation and blame it on Palestinians and convince Anders to send the U.S. and support Israel. If you couldn't tell, I don't like Israel. So that's the whole thing. But anyway, after that whole arc ends of them fighting terror cult, the fight cults and terrorists. I called Israel terrorist day. I'm so woke. They released the information of implicating Anders with Seraphim. Turns out the general public don't give a fuck. Fucking Anders wins the presidency, he wins the election, he's elected president. Probably the most realistic part of the story that I came up with. And so that ends with like the big ending, which is election night, in which the gang decide to stage their assassination. Anders is going to give like a big speech at like Dallas to like, an acceptance speech after finding out he won the election. Turns out they don't do a good job at it because, after their whole little incident for the terror cults, the CIA learned about them, and the whole assassination goes horrible. Fucking Isaac does fight the Antichrist. Antichrist beats the shit out of him, and Isaac is literally about to die. And Antichrist leaves because he sees the cameras rolling, and he doesn't want to reveal that he's Antichrist just yet. And so he knows that him and Isaac will meet again, so he lets Isaac off the hook for now. But Isaac is literally like bleeding out and is about to die when Constance decides to give of her like life energy to save Isaac and give him a second chance. Like Constance dies because she gives her like essence of life to Isaac, giving him like healing him, but she doesn't really die. She just kind of goes back to heaven, but Isaac will no longer see her because she's no longer his guardian angel. And so that motivates, that kind of gives like Isaac the ultimate motivation to keep going and keep fighting and, keep killing, so that's how that story arc ends. Only that after the failed assassination, like Isaac and Sybil and Elijah and Rajiv and Amber, their faces are seen, okay? They are put on the FBI most wanted list. They can no longer live a normal life. Like Isaac has to leave his apartment. Rajiv is like defrocked, not really, but like he has to go. Kelvin has to get out of school. Elijah, like he kills like his entire police department. They try arresting him and he leaves. So it's like that moves into a second saga, which is the Wanted saga, in which now the whole gang are outlaws and have to like live off the grid and like use fake identities and everything. It's not like the casual. They were still like they in the casual saga, they still had normal lives. Like they had friends, you know. Amber had friends, they had all that. But by the Wanted saga, not anymore. Okay, they are on the run from the police and everything. They are actively being looked at after, right? But like I said, every saga is also defined by Isaac's relationship. This one was Amber's. And yeah, that's the whole thing. So the big bad on this one, Anders is obviously the big bad of the whole series, but the big bad for this saga specifically is Seraphin, who is shown as like this just evil pedophile. So that's what the thing is. So the second saga is the Wanted saga. Like I said, our gang are now outlaws. They have to live off the grid. They have to constantly live in like different motels on the run because the police, the entire country is after them, you know. So the first arc in that one, I remember, is called the Europe arc, which you have to go to Europe because the arc starts with the before I get into the Europe arc, one thing I do want to, something goofy I came up with, I want to include is that Isaac, like before, okay, so Anders doesn't want to kill Isaac, but he wants to handicap him. So he has this like spell made using Isaac's like DNA that he took while during the fight. Like he has like Isaac's tooth stuck in his fist after beating the fuck out of him, and he casts a spell hoping that it'll like give him some sort of like not kill him, but like definitely handicap him in some way. It turns out, however, Anders fucks up the spell, and instead Isaac turns into a girl. Like his gender is literally flipped. Isaac was a dude, and after the spell, he physically turns into a woman. He's a girl now. In fact, if you didn't notice, I put in parentheses, Isaac becomes Imogen. That's his new girl name, Imogen. That's a real name, by the way. It's a very unique name. I like it. And so for this whole saga, the Wanted saga, Isaac is just a girl now, and he just kind of accepts because Rajiv doesn't even know this was possible, and Cecile has like no way of undoing this because she just can't figure it out. And so for this whole saga, Isaac is now Imogen. He's a girl now, and I don't mean like trans, like he like is cross-dressing. Like no, he's physically a woman. He has a vagina and breast now. He's a girl, okay. And I don't know. I just thought it was silly. And for this whole story, he's just a chick. But anyway, there's the Europe arc. That's the first major arc. Elijah has to, the Pope dies, and so as Isaac, or in this case, he's now Imogen. So keep in mind, if I say Imogen, Isaac and Imogen are the same person. I can literally use those names are interchangeable. They are the same person. Imogen is just a girl, Isaac, and Isaac is boy Imogen. So anyway, a conclave is held. The Pope dies. Imogen, being the high prophet, she's invited to Rome to witness it. She invites all of her friends. They go there. Elijah, however, gets scolded by the Templars for the horrible assassination attempt that went down. And not only that, the Templars don't like the fact that the high prophet is now a girl because they're also, but by the way, not a single high prophet before has ever been a girl. It's exclusively been a guy thing. And Templars don't like the fact that it's a girl now. And so there's like whole debate. The Templars debate about like executing Elijah for his failure. And they also think it maybe like possibly murdering Imogen and passing on the title of high prophet to someone else. So that constantly comes into conflict when they're in Rome and Italy. And so the gang had to fight the Templars. Turns out that the leader of the Templars is actually a werebear, not a werewolf where someone could turn to a wolf. He could turn to like a giant grizzly bear humanoid. And it's very tough. He's very tough. So that's the whole thing of that. After the Rome, where everything is looking good, fucking Imogen is like kidnapped by like the Russian mafia on the orders of Pushkin, who's like the dictator of Russia. And that's because Pushkin made like a Faustian deal with the devil. A Faustian deal was you sold your soul for power. But Pushkin knows that if he dies, he's gonna go to hell. So he figures by getting the high prophet Imogen, he can like make a new deal, and he can guarantee he's in like not go to hell, but like he's hoping at least for like limbo or trade his soul back in exchange for high prophet to the devil. And so Imogen gets kidnapped by the Russian mafia. He's brought over to Russia. The gang follows soon in pursuit, and it's just them in Russia, and they have to like fight the Russian mafia. They later fight like the Russian elites, what they call like Spetsnaz, and they ultimately like assassinate and kill Pushkin. And they have to like leave Russia, and like they get thrown into like a gulag, and it's like a whole thing. And they go in Russia. They go from Rome fighting the Templars to Russia and fighting like the dictator there. After they're done with Russia, they head back home, but they did make a pit stop in London because Sybil's family is from London. Sybil is American. She's not British, but like her. Okay, so Sybil's mom died when she was young, and her dad remarried, and this lady was British, and so then they're going to the UK. Sybil stayed in America. Her half siblings are British, and so they live in London. And so Isaac and Sybil decided to stop in London for the meantime because they can't use plane to go to America. They have to be illegally entered, and they're trying to meet up with like smugglers to smuggle in, but they're stopping in London in the meantime. Sybil's reunited with her family. They'll learn. However, other people who learn about Isaac's arrival or Imogen's arrival is like this cult of like wealthy British aristocrats and nobles, including the royal family, who run a satanic cult, and they ultimately believe that they want the Ex Mortis, the book, because it'll cast them actually to spells, and they can like make more power to themselves, the British aristocracy. And obviously, Rajiv and Cecile don't want to give them that, and so now they have to fight through this like satanic royal cult in the UK, and just like a whole thing. So that whole story ends. They succeed. They return to America. It goes to the second arc, the Hell arc. Basically, the story starts as the Misery dies, but obviously demons and angels don't die. They just go back to heaven, hell, like that respawn. So Misery ends up respawning in hell, and she can't leave because Satan finds out that his daughter left hell without his permission, and so he has her like locked up. And so the gang decided to bring her back because they like her and they don't want her to suffer. Rajiv ultimately makes up that Cecile opens a portal to hell. Rajiv goes in, sees a priest. He's considered untouched. He goes through hell and he finds Misery. And it's also like a look into how society and hell works, right? 99% of everyone suffers. However, the top demons, like Satan's children, like Misery and all of them, they get to live in these fancy palaces and have like people who sinned and they're like his servants and they can like abuse and do whatever they want. We meet like Misery's siblings, like her brother Agony, who's like a general in the armies of hell. His name is Agony. He has her sister Dolores, which if you don't know, Dolores is like a pretty common Spanish name. However, directly translated in English, Dolores means pain. So I just thought it was funny. I wanted to add to that. So Rajiv goes in, fun fact, Seraphim shows up again. Like Rajiv goes and meets up with a bunch of like, cult leaders who went to hell, and Seraphim's there. They return to hell. However, unknowingly, they have unleashed a bunch of demons who escaped through the portal that Cecile created. And so the hell arc is basically, there's now like thousands of demons. This is hundreds and thousands of demons roaming around. And they decide to stop them, They end up fighting this like giant, like kaiju Godzilla-sized demon. I call it like the Behemoth. And half the time is like the gang decide how the hell do they kill a giant monster like that. Which, by the way, by the casual saga, like the existence of vampires and demons are not public knowledge. People don't think those are real for the most part. However, by the Wanted saga, like it becomes more public knowledge. Like the government and everyone can't hide them anymore, especially after the Hell arc. Like people start realizing that demons and vampires and werewolves are real things. So that's also another big thing. They end up fighting the Behemoth. They fight this other monster called the Leviathan, who's like this giant sea monster who lives in the Rio Grande, the river that separates Texas and Mexico. The Leviathan like destroys stuff, but he also like spawns eggs, and these like mermaid monster people come out and they like attack and eat people. So they have to stop that also. Sorry if I'm like not talking anymore. My phone fucking died while recording, so this is like the second part. But anyway, we left off. We're just gonna go back where we left off. Okay, so we left off with fucking I was talking about the Hell arc, right? So they fight the Behemoth, they fight the Leviathan. A bunch of serial killers from Hell also like manage to sneak through, and they're resurrected as like zombies, and they go on like a killing spree. And like zombies can't be killed by traditional means, so they're literally just going around destroying people. People, motherfuckers like Jeffrey Dahmer and Richard Ramirez are back, and then just stabbing people. So now the gang have to go out and look for them and kill them and send them back to Hell. There's another thing with like the seven dead. Or actually, no, I'll say that for later. But another big thing is that Lily comes out. Lily is secretly Lilith, who's like the queen of demons. She is Satan's wife. However, Lilith also hates Satan because they don't have any children together, and she's like forced to be in hell as her punishment for like, because she was like Adam's the first person in Garden of Eden. It's like a whole story in the Bible, not really important to this. But Lily stinks from hell, and she lives on Earth, but she doesn't want to like be a demon and kill people. She just wants to live a normal life and live a normal thing. However, Imogen and Lily start dating because they unknowingly meet each other. They don't know, like Lily doesn't know Imogen is Isaac, and Isaac and Imogen doesn't know that Lily is Lilith. So, oh shit, my brother came back. Okay, so there's like the whole thing going on, and they date like a lesbian relationship with Imogen. It's kind of like weird about because she's like, a dude became a girl, but it's like a whole thing. Imogen is also like way older than him. She's also in like her 30s, and that's like a big relationship they have. The other shit doesn't end well because they eventually find out about their identity and they fight. And Isaac and Imogen is forced to kill Lilith and send her back to hell. And it's like a very heartbroken for Imogen because the second relationship ended in a very horrible way. So there's that whole thing. That arc ends with them ultimately kind of keeping the demons at bay and going back home. After that, there's the Hollywood arc. That whole storyline ends with, it's called Hollywood. That big bad is Elias Tobias. The whole gang have to go to Hollywood, Los Angeles, because Elias Tobias, turns out he kidnapped Gabriel the Archangel, Michael's like other archangel. He's been using him, dissecting him in order to get like angel powers so he can like go to heaven and claim himself to be God. Elias Tobias is very maniacal. His plan is not realistic because he's not a very smart person. So that's the whole thing about him. So the gang have to go to Los Angeles. They meet up there. They team with this like Hollywood, like like you've seen the movie Eyes Wide Shut. It's like a weird cult made up of like Hollywood celebrities. They're all like parodies of all show celebrities, musicians and actors. And it's like they go there, they fight them because they also want the Ex Mortis. Then they have to deal with this like they go to like Silicon Valley to deal with these other tech billionaires. Turns out Elias Tobias has created this like super AI that can like basically control drones and everything. They have to like fight through that. And then they ultimately do meet up with Elias Tobias' like towers, like a tower battle, this ginormous skyscraper filled with like people who like worship him as like a godlike figure. And so they have to go through like every floor. Like, have you seen the movie The Raid? It's basically that every floor, and they have to like fight through a bunch of his fucking cult members, and they have to make up their way until they eventually fight him and his fucking AI super robot. So that's how that arc ends. It ultimately ends with like they kill Elias Tobias and they free Gabriel. That whole arc saga ends with the prison break. Basically, Noah, the previous High Prophet, is arrested and he's taken to like a super prison in like Colorado, which is like a real one. And so Anders figures that like, why do we need the current High Prophet to summon Satan into the ritual? Let's just use the old one. And so now, knowing that Noah has been like booked and his information is out there and his whereabouts, the gang and Anders is like a race through time to get to Anders. I mean, to get to Noah and free him. The gang wants to free Noah and like let him escape so he can escape from Anders. Anders wants him to do the ritual. Hesh is sent there, and so was the vice president. Isaac actually kills, or Imogen kills the vice president. Big win for her, but Hesh manages to steal Noah and he still escapes with him. And so it's a big no-no. You know, Anders does the ritual. It kind of works. He does open a portal to hell, but only a certain amount of demons can actually cross. Satan himself cannot cross because, you know, the rule is it's the current High Prophet, not the old one. So it's kind of disappointing. However, still, Anders does kind of succeed a bit, and legions of hell come in, and that begins the next saga, the Apocalypse Saga, which basically the U.S. is now overrun with like demons destroying and killing people. And Isaac and the gang have to like go to Washington, D.C. and finally put an end to all this, you know, because happened. Around this time, Natalie also tried freeing Noah from Anders' imprisonment, but she fails and she dies. So bad ending for her, you know. But okay, after this, you have the Apocalypse Saga. It's called that because the U.S. is now overrun with demons running around and killing people. So that whole saga starts, however, with the Dream Arc, which is kind of different, you know. After the fight, Isaac kind of goes into like a comatose state, but created by like a demon, a dream demon. Oh, by the way, Hell Arc. There's also, they fight like a music demon who kind of has the power to like manipulate time to different eras via music. And it's just an excuse for me to have the characters all dress up in different time eras, like the 1940s, 1960s, 1980s, and have the whole style. So that's the whole thing. But in the Dream Arc, Isaac, the dream demon, kind of has Isaac go through these different like realities where he lives different lives in order to like attempt Isaac to like stay in these dreams and not wake up and not really die, but not really live either. So it's easier for Anders to find him, actually do the performance if he's not fighting back, you know? So in the Dream Arc, you know, in one of them, Isaac like, wakes up in a reality where he has like no memory of anything. He's like in a high school setting. Like the whole gang are like teenagers in high school. It's like an alternate universe type thing. All except Misery, she's the only one who like retains her memory because she's like a demon, and she tries to convince everyone they have to like kill that version of Anders, who's like the school principal, and they have to like kill him so they can like free from that whole thing. Ooh, my bad, gang. They do that, but like Dream Demon is so powerful, so he wakes up. Isaac wakes up and like, oh, by the way, but by the time the apocalypse starts, Imogen turns back to Isaac. It turns out like I haven't really decided how he turns back to it. I want, maybe it's like a timer thing where he only stays as Imogen for a bit before he turns back into a dude, or maybe Cecile finally figured a spell. I haven't decided on it 100% yet, but by the time of the Apocalypse Saga, Imogen is Isaac again. Like Isaac is a dude again, you know. So it's just a fun little thing he had. And like I said, by the Apocalypse Saga, Isaac starts dating Sybil. That's like the big relationship of that saga. So that happens. So anyway, in the second dream world, he wakes up in like a zombie apocalypse. Alternate universe, like it's just his friends, but they're all zombies. And Isaac is Imogen again in this dream, just cause, and it's like a zombie apocalypse type situation. There's no demons, no vampires, it's just regular people fighting fucking zombies. Isaac by that point is already fully aware. Imogen is fully aware that he's in a dream, so he just tries to find that version of Anders and kill him. And the third and final one, dream world, that he wakes up in is in an alternate reality where Isaac has never chosen to be High Prophet. He's just a regular dude. He's up on top of that apartment building, but the angel never sends down and chooses him. So, in that universe, he like tries to find his friends, and it's kind of depressing. He doesn't find anyone because, you know, most of them found him, not the other way around. He does find Rajiv, but like he doesn't believe him, and he kind of thinks he's like crazy. He does find, Amber, who does believe him, but can't do anything because when Isaac checks, it turns out Anders is already dead, so he doesn't even know where he can be to find him. And so, and you know, that's where kind of like an alternate decision. Like, what if Isaac decided to become a vampire to live with Amber? And he does that, and it's kind of like a look into it, how his life would have been. Like, they have like a family. But ultimately, Isaac realizes this is not the real world, and he does find Anders. It turns out Anders didn't become president of this universe. He's just a regular sleazy businessman, and Isaac makes the decision to kill him And I'm gonna say, but the third one, Isaac is very tempted to just stay and be a family man with Amber, but he knows this isn't the real world. He knows this isn't real. He kills him and he turns back to the real world, and it does kind of create some drama because Isaac, for him, it felt like a real life. Like he had kids with Amber, he spent his whole life. So the fact that he wakes up in his world and they don't have a family, and he's with Sybil. He still likes Sybil, but like it's kind of like awkward now. But there's a whole thing. So the whole dream arc ends with like just that trippy alternate universe things. Which, by the way, high school setting and zombie apocalypse are like the two most popular like alternate universe settings and like fanfics. Like if your story isn't set in a high school or a zombie apocalypse, fanfic writers would create that as their alternate universe. So I just included it because I'm knowledgeable in fanfics and that's what I wanted to do. My brother was just staring at me from the fucking window. I don't know what he was doing. That fucking weirdo. Okay, whatever. So the dream arc ends to the road trip arc. That is, the gang are still like after the dream arc, Isaac wakes up and everyone's like, right, they all die. He kind of like died and they were kind of like worried what to do. He wakes up and decide to go on a road trip to El Paso to Washington D.C. because that's where Anders is at, and they ultimately realize that Anders for some reason it wasn't going after them anymore, and they figured we gotta take the fight to him now, right? Like it was a fight was supposed to happen in El Paso. Now they gotta go over there. So that arc begins with them going on a road trip across America to Washington, from El Paso, Texas to Washington, D.C. Along there, they like go through the South where they meet this like Christian, like nationalist zealots who believe like demon invasion is like the rapture, and they have to like kill all the non-believers. So they like terrorize these other communities. And so the gang obviously help out the communities and kill and defeat these nationalist crazy people. They also meet up with like the 7 deadly sins, like the representations of those who are like demon like kings who now they control like the areas around Washington D.C. and they're fighting each other. So the gang show up, they're kind of like in the middle of a war, and they get involved. And obviously they have to kill and defeat the 7 deadly sins because they're demons. They shouldn't have to do that. Also, before that though, when they're like traveling to like the East Coast, they run into like a Chinese number station. A number station is like the secret place by other countries they use to like spy on other countries and report to them using numbers and code. They run into one by the Chinese government, and the gang find out that like the Chinese government, because they know this demon invasion of America means it's the end for the country, and China will be the most powerful country, and so they're already planning on how to like divide the U.S. and how to do it. Now the gang obviously are not very patriotic, but that doesn't mean they're gonna let like China just invade and conquer America. So they also decide to stop this like pre-Chinese invasion and destroy the number station and China. So that whole arc ends with them defeating the 7 deadly sins and going into Washington D.C., which starts the liberation arc, which is all of them liberating D.C. from the demons. They fight off Beelzebub, which I didn't write. Beelzebub is like an actual demon in the Bible. He's very powerful. He's like the Lord of the Flies. He's weirdly enough, Anders is like not present, and Beelzebub is kind of in charge. So he's kind of like the big bad. Like they have to rise up the local population, this demon apocalypse, and they fight Beelzebub and they have to kill him. There's like that whole thing. That arc ends with them killing Beelzebub. They find out that Anders is actually in like this, like beneath the White House is like this complete like underground vault city that's like fucking thousands of miles long. It's like an underground city, and Anders is apparently hiding out there. And so the gang go down, they find him, and it's the final thing, Judgment Day, the final battle of good and evil. Isaac versus Anders. It's a big fight. The rest of the gang also fighting like other powerful demons and stuff like that. And the story ends with Isaac killing the Antichrist, completing the task. He dies. The invasion of hell is stopped. The demon invasion of America is stopped. A portal opens, sucking up all the demons back into hell, and the day is saved. Isaac has completed his mission, and it's a happy ending, which is surprising because a lot of my stories do not have happy endings. So, anyway, most of the bad guys die. Hesh Miller is actually murdered by Anders after he failed to like open the portal completely, and in a fit of rage, he like fucking kills him. Obviously, Elias Tobias dies. Seraphim Vale dies like twice. Carl Tuckerson actually commits suicide after finding out Anders is a demon because the Antichrist, because he couldn't live with it, I guess. Laura Green is arrested and is later sent to prison for life. Petishkin dies. Lily is sent back to hell. We don't really see her after her relationship, but she does show up in like a cameo where she like congratulates Isaac after defeating the Antichrist, saying that, because I do want to show that while Lily didn't know, Isaac and Lily didn't know each other's identity, Lily did love, well, I guess not Isaac, but she did love Imogen. Like they did love each other. It's just unfortunate set of circumstances prevented them from being together, Like I said, the good guys mostly live. Natalie Cruz dies. Noah dies. Agnes, I haven't decided if she dies. I feel like she probably just ascends back to heaven. I might do a thing where she becomes Isaac's guardian angel after Constance, but I'm not 100% sure on that idea. Mike also find Kelvin finally also, like after the end, he does like a whole side story. I didn't really include in the arc, but it's like a side story where he does figure out how he died in his family, and he comes to terms with his death, and he finally like ascends to heaven, so he leaves also. Other characters kind of have their happy endings, uh yeah, okay, so Isaac and Sybil finally get together, they get married, and decide to like go off and live in Hawaii. And because I want to show that Isaac always wanted to go visit Hawaii, and they could be together, finally away from all like the dangers and demons and everything, just be a regular normal people. Amber's whole thing is she wanted to see the world, but she couldn't leave because the whole thing, because she was trapped in her clan. Other clans would have killed her if she left, so she was stuck in El Paso. But now that the war is over and the other vampires decide not to kill her, she finally, live her dream. She's been alive for 300 years, and yet she's never left El Paso, Texas. And so she can finally like go out and see the world, something that she's always wanted. So that's what she does. Rajiv is actually offered to become like Pope or at least some like high position, but he rejects them because he's happy just being a regular priest, just roaming around Texas, documenting things. He's just happy with that. Elijah actually decides to switch identities. He actually ends up becoming vice president after like the new government is established by like a new president, and he picks Elijah, who doesn't go by Elijah anymore. Like at that point, he's a new name, and Elijah becomes like the vice president, and is like something he's may or not do a good job at. And yes, Misery ultimately decides to stay on Earth, and demon knowledge is fun. People just kind of accept that demons exist and there are good demons. So Misery doesn't hide as a human anymore, and she and Cecile can also be together, and they can also just live in happiness, knowing there's no more danger, there's nothing to be worried about. They can just enjoy life. So that's the whole thing. And yeah, that's basically the story, how it goes. Yeah, there's still some like other story arcs I would have liked to add, but I didn't include them to the arcs. Or either because I just didn't feel they're important to mention, or I haven't really figured it out. Like I would like a little story bit of the gang going to like Japan and they fight like the Yakuza. I don't know why they would fight the Yakuza or go to Japan. It's just something I would like to do. Liberation arc, I didn't get into a lot of it. Most of them had like a rule 3 where I give some examples. I still haven't figured out exactly how they like fight the Visible or liberate the city. Still working a phase on that. Yeah, like I said, I think it's a good idea. I really like High Profit. I hope you guys understood what I was saying. I know I kind of talked fast towards the end here because this video is getting really long, and I didn't want to do that. I'm a certified yapper, especially with things I create. So yeah, I'm very happy with this. I think it's a good idea. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me yap about this. I hope you guys also think it's a good idea. I'm very proud of it, obviously. Comment down below some ideas, suggestions you might have for me. Maybe flesh out some of the characters more, give them more interesting traits or personalities, or maybe some more story arcs I can add. Comment down which one saga do you think is best, which arc you like most. And yeah, just I don't know, maybe some more ideas. Or maybe I should keep Isaac as Emogen permanently, or maybe I should make Isaac and Misery date for a bit, make Misery like bisexual or something, or maybe I should like Elijah doesn't end up getting a girl. He doesn't stay as like an incel forever. Elijah ends up like dating like this incubus, which there's a succubus, which is like a demon girl who like seduces people, and incubus is a demon dude. And Elijah, like, he doesn't really come out as gay, but he definitely doesn't mind the fact that his demon incubus is actually a dude, even though he cross dresses. Like it's like a femboy type situation, And incubus is actually like a dude. He doesn't mind that. So it's kind of, he does end up getting his action. He becomes vice president, and his incubus boyfriend becomes the second gentleman. I don't know what they call. So he doesn't stay as a lonely incel forever, And yeah, I'm trying to think of any other details I want to add. I think that's about it, though. I think this is it. Comment down who you think is the best villain. Comment down what you think is the best saga. Comment down what you think is the best arc. Who's the best good guy? And tell me if you would like to see this become an actual thing. I would like to. I think it's cool. You think it's cool? I think it's cool. And yeah, so yeah, I guess that's it. I hope you guys enjoy watching, and I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.